The following podcast is suitable for all audiences.
Coach Fox announced Monday that Kevin White fractured his scapula in Sunday's game.
He's working really hard to get back, and I got a lot of faith in what he's going to be able to bring to the table this year. He's looking good while we're throwing together out here, and we just got to continue to put in that work. And I know he's busting his tail to really do big things this year.
Cheers, Bears fans! You just heard Mitch Trubisky on the Bears All Access radio show over at Score Sports Radio 670. Mitch tells us all that Kevin White is looking good as he rehabilitates from his shoulder injury. Trubisky and White have been working out together, and indications are that White will return to training camp at 100% good health. You are listening to the Bears Barroom Radio Network's Bears on Tap show, and I am Aldo Gandia. Today's show is focused on the NFL Combine, and we'll begin momentarily by talking to Mike Ryan, a 26-year veteran of the sports medicine and physical therapy world. He's worked in the NFL for many years, and he will share with us the importance of physicals down at the Combine, and I'll pick his brain a little about the Kevin White shoulder injury. Then later, we'll have West Coast Phil Rainey and Danny Shimon sharing their thoughts on players they thought performed well at the Combine and a few that did not help themselves. Before all that, here's my opening thought. The Chicago Bears are on the clock. Yes, I know that's a phrase commonly used at draft time, but I want to apply it here for Ryan Pace. In fact, this is a personal message to Ryan Pace from me. As the new league year begins Wednesday, it will be your fourth year as general manager of the Bears. And somehow, your 14-34 record has got you a contract extension through 2021. It's not often an NFL general manager is told your rebuilding plan has failed. And by the way, here's the new contract. And on top of that, you'll be getting a new office soon. But I applaud the decision to keep you, Ryan, and I think the majority, if not all, of our Bears Barroom analysts feel the same way, and I know many of our Barflies join me in applauding the contract extension for you. Ryan, we're also pleased that you've been correcting your mistakes. You actually began last year when you finally drafted a quarterback and invested heavily to get the man that you are convinced will be the Bears franchise quarterback. And then 2 months ago, you canceled that stupid Odd Couple show of you and John Fox and replaced it with the Bosom Buddies show of Matt Nagy and you. You guys truly make a good pair. You've given us hope. And then on top of all that, at the Combine this year, you offered the type of transparency we Bears fans have been craving from you. And frankly, we deserve it. For instance, you told us of the plans to release Mike Glennon at the start of the new contract year, and that makes sense. It's sensible transparency. We're not asking to see your big board. We're not asking to get in the middle of your contract negotiations with free agents. We're just asking for sensible transparency. But Ryan, as you know, you've got a lot of work ahead of you in free agency and in the draft. There are tons of vacancies in this roster that you need to fill with players who can have an immediate impact on this team or an impact in a not-too-distant future. So Ryan, when you're done listening to the rest of the show, get back to work because, as a reminder, you're on the clock. Okay, let's bring Mike Ryan in. Mike, on your blog over at MikeRyanSportsMedicine.com, you asked the question, how valuable are the medical exams at the NFL Combine? Well, Bill Polian answered that question years ago when he said they are the most important part of the Combine. And after reading your article, you agree. Tell me why.
Because you have to know the status of the players. You have to know what their capabilities are. Like I always say, I don't put on a coaching hat or a scouting hat. I don't care what their 40 time is. But when you're at the Combine, if you're the medical guy and part of that medical team, your job is to know exactly what's going on medically. Because really, the way I looked at it, after spending 26 years in the league, the draft decision comes down to three opinions: the medical opinion, the coaching opinion, and the scouting opinion. And knowing that medical status, like I said, for those players is real important. A lot of different ways you can look at it, but it has a big impact both short-term and long-term when it comes to his team drafting a player.
Now, in your article, you talked a little bit about the process that is involved down in Indianapolis at the Combine for these medical exams. Can you take us through that, please?
Sure. It's lengthy and it has many aspects to it. The first thing is that the player would sit down with a certified athletic trainer and go over their medical history by body part, the neck, the shoulders, the back. You go through everything, and they'd fill out that form to kind of see, hearing it from the player directly, what kind of areas have they had any limitations? Have they had any surgeries? Have they had any procedures of any sort? Any limitations in the weight room? So they come away with a comprehensive summary of that player's body and what kind of surgeries and issues they've had, so to speak. But also in their back pocket, they know the medical history of the player. They make a comparison. So if that player happened to forget about that one little shoulder surgery they had their freshman year, that's going to come back up on the radar screen. So they have a medical history. The player enters the medical exam rooms. There's 6 orthopedic stations while the team are dispensed in individual rooms. So those 6 stations will go through the exams, knowing the history, looking at the history, getting all the x-rays and MRIs. A lot of times they try to get that done ahead of time before they get into that orthopedic room. So the doctors have the medical history, they have obviously the player, and they have the special tests, be them MRIs, CT scans, or x-rays, and they could do a very comprehensive test.
Now, how does that work? We got 32 different trainers and teams there. Are all of them a part of this examination, or is the NFL conducting the examination and that information is shared with the 32 teams?
No. All 32 teams are there. Their doctors and their athletic trainers are putting their hands on every one of those players. So those 32 teams are broken up into 6 stations. So they would all have a chance to do that evaluation and examine it. And then from there, they'd have an internal medicine check, the old turn your head and cough test, and blood work and EKGs, listen to all the hearts and do the blood work, urine testing. So once they get through the rigors of that cattle stampede, if you will, of getting the medical exams, then they'd go on to do the physical exams, such as the 40 tests and the bench press and all those. But they try to get that medical part out of the way. So A, are there any limitations or concerns? As you read this year a lot, there were a handful of players that weren't allowed to do the 40 or weren't allowed to work out because of what they found in that medical exam. So getting that medical exam done up front, they know what they're looking at, all the teams gather information, and then they can assess, is there a risk for this player doing any of the kind of physical testing on the field.
Now let's talk a little bit about your background. You are, of course, an NFL injury expert. Just listening to you talk for the last couple of minutes, you can clearly tell that. You're an award-winning sports medicine expert. Your bio also says that you are NBC Sports' medicine analyst, and that you're also a former NFL athletic trainer and physical therapist. Is that correct?
That's correct. You did your homework. Well done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And I worked in the league for 26 years, 6 years as an assistant with the New York Giants, and then the next 20 years as the head athletic trainer and physical therapist with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I retired from there 4 years ago, and now I have a physical therapy practice here in Jacksonville Beach. I do a lot of sports medicine seminars, wellness conferences, and also work as like you said, the sports medicine analyst for NBC Sports and Sunday Night Football.
And I encourage all of our listeners to follow you on Twitter at Ryan Sports Med. That's RYAN Sports Med. You've got tons of great tweets there. I've got a lower back injury, and you just showed me a few minutes ago when I took a look at your...
Watch my hamstring.
Exactly.
Video?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Now you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key thing, right?
I tell you, there's a lot of, not to jump on a soapbox, so to speak, but there's a lot of things that we did in the NFL to keep elite athletes very healthy. That what I do now is share that with non-professional athletes, and simple things like that, stretching your hamstrings, can take a ton of stress off your low back and keep you out of pain. That's an important part of what I do now in this, I call it phase 2 of my professional career.
Very cool. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about how your profession has changed in the NFL over the years. What practices have we seen? What improvements have we seen with treating player injuries? It does seem like, to me, without any data available, that it seems like we're going through a phase of more injuries in the NFL. Am I correct on that?
Well, the numbers sometimes say that yes and no. They haven't come out with the numbers yet from this past season, but to answer your first question, there has been a big evolution of sports medicine and medical care for players in the NFL, and it's all gotten better. I think the thing that I feel great about is I know the people involved with it, the athletic trainers, physicians, the medical specialists involved with that side of the endeavor, so to speak. Their heart's in the right place. They want to treat people. They want to take care of people. And they're putting that medical decision first and foremost. But just like anything else, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of testing. The thing that people don't realize is sports medicine is not an exact science. So the fact that we're getting better at diagnosing testing, the special testing, you look at 20 years ago, we didn't have nearly the kind of testing we have now with MRIs. So every year that continues to get better and better. You look at the concussions, that's obviously a real hot potato in the NFL. And is that the perfect protocol? No, but they're putting a lot of effort to it, and it gets a lot better each and every year. There's a big component to medicine with players, whether they're weekend warriors or players in the NFL, of educating individuals of what the risks are, concussions, what's the signs and symptoms, what do you have to deal with, what's the things to look out for. So it's a process that continues to get better. And I think some of the things that the rehab techniques is a thing as a physical therapist I get excited about, because the rehab protocols and the rehab equipment continues to get better and better. So you see players getting, they have their injuries, but they get better that much quicker. And the important part I think that's overlooked a lot is the re-injury rate in the NFL is very low. So you're getting these players back to a very, very demanding job, and their hands are really full to do that. So getting them back on the field is one thing, but keeping them there, that's a thing that medical staffs take a lot of pride in at all levels of sports.
Now, I'm not asking you at all to be critical of anyone in the NFL, but here in Chicago, we just recently went through a change in sports trainer and the staff that handles that for the Chicago Bears. Is there really that much of a difference between what sports therapists and sports medicine can do from team to team? Can you potentially see fewer injuries by bringing in a new team to handle that?
Well, I'm a little biased in this. I'm not sure if you know this, but Andre Tucker, the new head athletic trainer in Chicago, is one of my former assistants. So, I love him. He's a great one. I know they have a great athletic trainer heading up the medical department now with Andre in town. But yes, that's a big part of it, because any major injury that requires surgery, people that work with elite athletes will tell you 50% of the success of that player's comeback is going to be the surgery. But the other 50% is the rehab. So having the two sides of that, Mark Bowen, the team physician, orthopedic surgeon for your Bears, I also work with when I was with the Giants, and he's a great one as well. So you got a great two-headed monster there with two key professionals that are very, very good at what they do and are very good people. So you get that kind of balance. You put in place a medical staff that can apply great medical care to the players, and that's something, because regardless of what your resume says and what kind of equipment you have in there, what kind of budget, what I've learned working with elite athletes is the most valuable tool you have in their eyes is trust. They have to trust you. They have to put their faith in their career and their injuries and their joints and their likelihood of getting back in the field into the hands of that medical staff. So that's an important role. And people that are in this position don't take that role for granted. And they know that trust is an important thing to build on each and every day. So starting things in the offseason, getting in there with the rehab players and working with them, not only just when the games come up on Sundays in the fall, but this time of the year as well is an important part of putting together good medical staff and getting players healthy for a long push, which is a long NFL season.
Getting back to the combine, is it possible for a player to overtrain for the combine?
Yes, very much so. And you see everybody's going to these special camps with these special personal trainers, and a lot of times you see players training for the testing of the combine. Are they training to play football? In most cases, for skill players, no. They're training to have a great combine. We've been victim to that here in Jacksonville, where we've had players that have put up some amazing numbers in the combine and get to the NFL for whatever the reason may be. They don't have anywhere near the career that you expected to see when you saw them running the field up in Indianapolis. So, yeah, you can overtrain with that. You see some soft tissue injuries. And that's a real issue. And it's one of the reasons why very few people know this, but they have a second combine. About 2 weeks before the draft, they have a combine back in Indianapolis. It's only for medical, and it's to bring people back that were either hurt during the first combine or maybe they had surgery after a bowl game. So they weren't in top medical shape at that first combine in February. So they bring him back in April to get a better look at him closer to the draft. So long-winded answer, but yes, if they overdo it, they can suddenly get into that under that medical umbrella, and their pro day and everything has to pay the price because of that.
Well, and here in Chicago, we had an experience with Kevin White back in 2015. There's speculation that perhaps he overtrained for the combine, which is why he suffered this stress fracture in his shin that wasn't detected until the OTAs. He may have suffered the injury during OTAs, but some people are saying that perhaps overtraining for the combine resulted in the stress fracture. Do you buy that as a possibility?
It could be, because look at the scenario here. These guys are working hard to get ready to start playing the games most times in late August. And their season's done in December. They may have a bowl game, but no, they keep pushing it on. When they get done with that bowl game, they're going right to that camp to get ready for that combine. They do a big push for the combine. Then they get ready for their pro day. And all the things that go on with this, they never let up. I mean, this is like a 10-month-year job. And then here comes the interesting thing. I used to sit down with my coaches and general managers, and we kind of go over this, but they wouldn't really buy into it. They're going hard all the way through that offseason, pro day, everything else. Well, the weekend the draft rolls around, what do? The hay's in the barn, man. They're just going to chill. They're going to, party up with their family. They're going to celebrate the draft, all the things that go on with it. Well, that following Thursday, what are they going to do? They got to roll into this new city. They're probably in the worst shape and ate the worst and with least condition over the last week or so because they didn't have a pro day. And they roll into town. They get all the expectations of a brand new team, big shiny lights, all these things that go on with. They got to go out in that field and run around with veterans at a very, very high level. It's a perfect formula for overtrained, underutilized players to perform at a very high level in, April or May. That's a problem. We used to see a lot of soft tissue injuries because of that during those OTAs and mini camps.
Right. Staying with Kevin White, then the following year, he suffered a stress fracture in his shin. And a lot of people have speculated that it was the initial injury that perhaps contributed to the fact that he had this additional injury. Do you think there's credence to that thinking?
Well, you're always looking at the body mechanics, and these guys are stallions. They're running at a very high level. The forces they put in their body are astronomical. So if you get a little bit of a wheel alignment, you're rolling down the road at 30 miles an hour when you're jogging, doing simple things, it's not a big deal. You take that same car with that little shimmy at the wheel alignment at 30 miles an hour, put it on the big highway, and you're doing 65. That shimmy doesn't get better. It gets worse. So if there's a misalignment there or something's off, be it the dynamics of the muscles or the bone or whatnot coming out of that initial injury, I'm sure that's something that the medical staff looked at and they would correct that because you want to make sure you get that right. Because it wasn't like you're sitting in an ice tub for a couple months and you get out and you start running full speed. There's a progression. And progression is the key word for these kind of things because you want to get guys to where they are, to where they want to be. And you usually have plenty of time to do that. So it could be a factor. It could contribute to that injury. But sometimes you get, like I said, it's not an exact science. And sometimes you get these crazy injuries that come out of nowhere. And they're not always easy to predict. Right.
One last question regarding Kevin White. Now, in his third year in the league, he suffered a shoulder scapula fracture. What's a scapula? And can we expect him to be 100%? The injury was suffered in week 3, I believe, of the 2017 season. So can we expect the recuperating period to be over by the time OTA start, let's say?
Well, obviously not examine Kevin. I can't speak directly about him himself, but I can tell you in 26 years in the league, I think I saw 2 scapula fractures.
Wow.
So that's just straight trauma. And the scapula is the shoulder blade on the backside of the rib, so to speak. And it's usually a straight trauma kind of thing. It's not an overuse injury. So when you get one of those, you say they took the wrong hit in the wrong way, and that shoulder pad just didn't quite do its job the way it got hit. It doesn't happen very often, but they tend to heal very well. Usually has plenty of time. And the nice thing about his position is he can run around a lot without getting hit on it. So unlike you get a guy like that, he's in the trenches. You say, hey, he's not going to be in contact drills. Yeah, but every time he's putting his hand on one of the defensive linemen, if let's say he's an offensive lineman. So this is a position you can run around, do a lot before you take those big hits in September. I would not be scared of someone who had a scapular fracture in a wide receiver position who obviously has had plenty of time to heal.
Back to the combine to finish up here. Were there any particular athletes who you saw perform at the combine that you said, wow, what an exceptional athlete this person is?
I didn't. To be honest with you, again, like that, not putting on the coaching hat at the combine is, I don't look at those too much because I know those guys are training just to do it. The guy had the great bench press, or the guy who's super fast. That doesn't always correlate into big numbers come September. So I kind of look at that with a grain of salt, and I'm more interested in who's the healthy guys and who are the injured kind of guys too. So that performance under the big spotlight on sports turf, there's no wind. It's a perfect scenario. Like you say, guys run around in their underwear. They should have good workouts, and no one's going to punch them in the mouth.
There you go. Did you hear of any particular injuries or physical examinations at the combine that may be concerning?
They had a couple guys with, as they do every year, with hamstring pulls during doing the skill position stuff. All those things should heal. There's a couple guys that had some cardiac issues, and that tends to pop up every year because they do some really in-depth cardiac testing. And again, these doctors are there just to look for stuff. And if there's something there, they're going to find it. So every year you tend to get some of those. 8 out of 10 of them, they do enough testing, and everybody says, this is fine. It's not a risk factor. It's something he's had previously, but they always have to err on the side of caution, get further testing. He'll be a guy. When you see guys with that, you know they're coming back for that second combine. You do additional testing, and then everybody looks at it because, like I said in my article, every team grades differently. You can see guys, everybody's examining the same players. Everybody's looking at the same MRIs. Everybody's looking at the same CT scans and blood work. But how every team interprets that information, that's where the secret sauce comes in, and that's where teams can vary because some teams, like we used to do in Jacksonville here, we look at the risk factors. Some teams grade them based on the longevity factor, how long they'd be in the league. Other teams will say, hey, what's the risk of him having downtime in the first 2 years? So how you take that information, how you interpret it, again, is going to vary with the team, just like with scouting stuff. Those guys are watching the same film in the same games. Some guys say, hey, this is a first rounder. Some guys say, no, he's not to a third or fourth round. So, again, not an exact science in the NFL. And it makes it fun. It gives us stuff to talk about, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can find that article at MikeRyanSportsMedicine.com, and you can follow Mike at RyanSportsMed on Twitter. Do you have a Facebook page as well, Mike?
I do. It's Mike Ryan Sports Medicine.
Very good. Anything else you'd like to tell our listeners before we say goodbye?
Go Bears.
All right. I love it. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise.
I enjoyed the chat.
Great. Okay, we're going to join the Danny Shimon, West Coast Phil Rainey discussion. We really plan to have both of these guys on for 30 to 45 minutes, but as typically happens at Bears Bar Room, the conversation amplified to two times, 3 times the amount of time. But I think you're going to find this interesting, and if you only want to focus on one particular area, the timings of when we talk about a certain position group are listed in the notes section. So we're going to join the conversation already in progress. Hope you enjoy it.
I was going to say, we should maybe spend half the podcast just talking about DJ Shark.
How about it? We could definitely do that. That guy is very impressive.
I knew you were gonna go there. The whole time I'm watching him, I said, you know what? Danny's going to be on this guy all fucking night long. And sure enough, you bring him up right out the blue.
I just want to make sure I stay consistent. I don't want to.
He still got that man crush.
Oh, yeah.
And can you blame him? And can you blame him, boy?
But just real quick, I was curious if Phil feels the same way. Phil, have you dug into, well, I'm sure you have, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like the more I dig into this class, the less I'm impressed by it. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I forgot what the turning point for me was. It started when I was watching the first day, the offensive linemen, and I'm like, oh, my God, these guys are horrible. And I mean it in the way that, you know, when you start watching their movements, some of the drills they put these guys through, it exposes things that you don't see on tape. But then again, I always think, well, shit, some of this has nothing to do with football.
Right. And I was referring to once I started getting into the tape. You know, I started watching some of these guys more on tape. really, like, this guy's that highly rated? But, like for example, Hayden Hurst, the tight end from South Carolina, decent, good athlete, decent receiver. I think Matt's got him like his top tight end. I'm like, really? Like, I don't see that. But right. So the group of offensive tackles for me, at least, for me, the group of offensive tackles is like one of the worst.
Yeah,
worst in years that I've seen. Like there is no, clear cut. This guy's gonna stay, start for 10, 12 years and blah blah. There's nothing like that. It's just, it's he could be good. He could be a right tackle. He might be a guard kind of thing. So.
Well, the spread offense has killed the offensive line. None of these guys put their hand in the dirt anymore. They're all standing on in a 2-point stance. The guys on the defense are faster now. So yeah, it's a combination of a few things. But yeah, I miss some of the old school football that I was used to seeing, where you had offensive linemen who were maulers, and they were maulers right out of college, but part of it, I'd say 90% of it has to do with the change in the offensive schemes that college teams use now.
Right.
You don't see power running anymore. It's all zone.
Besides Stanford, out by you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Those smart guys at Stanford. All right, you have been listening to Danny Shimon and West Coast Phil Rainey talking college football scouting. We were eavesdropping on them before we officially began our interview, where we're going to talk about the combine. Prior to that, you were listening to Mike Ryan, the sports medicine therapist, talk about the value of the physicals at the combine. And so I'm going to begin by asking you guys, I'm going to begin the official portion of the show by asking you guys, do you agree with Mike Ryan that the physicals are the most important part of the NFL Combine, much more important than 40 speeds, much more important than any of the drills, even more important than the one-on-one interviews? And he didn't say this, I'm saying this, because of the value that you get out of these physical examinations. Phil, I'll begin with you. What are your thoughts?
The combine started with, it was just about physicals, but now look at what it's become. You have all these other side events and drills and things of that nature that, seem to be the focus. No one ever talks about the physicals anymore on television. The announcers don't. So I would say to the teams, yes, the physical parts are still very important, because they're getting information on these kids that they don't publicize anymore, which helps them make a decision on whether or not to downgrade some of these players because of their history, which I'll go into later on when we actually start talking specifics as far as what we impressed us and didn't, and as it relates to the Bears, because it's a good thing you brought this up, because you guys seem to have had a lot of injuries this past year. So
yes.
So yeah, I guess I'm kind of answering the question by saying, yeah, the medical part is very important, because I think teams need to weigh that in a little bit more than they have been, because I see a lot of guys now that come out of college, and I hate to bring this up, but Kevin White's a prime example. He was a first-round pick, and he hasn't really panned out for you guys, and it all has to do with the medical issues. It had nothing to do with him playing on the field.
That's right. And Danny, what are your thoughts?
Well, if I had to rank them in terms of most important to least important, I would definitely say the physicals, the medicals are the most important thing. The one-on-ones, meeting these guys, seeing them face to face is the second thing, and then the on-field stuff is the third most important thing in terms of if I had to rank them, 1, 2, 3. So.
Yeah, the last thing the Chicago Bears need right now is to draft injured players with an injury history or injury concerns. They just cannot afford that with all the needs that they have. All right.
Yeah, however, all Bears fans are clamoring for them to sign Allen Robinson coming off of a torn ACL.
I know.
You must have been reading my mind, Danny, because as soon as you said that, I was thinking, well, not only just draft him, but sign him in free agent. I wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole.
Interesting, because we did a poll on our Twitter account, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like 70% of our followers said that the Bears should aggressively pursue Allen Robinson in free agency, and I am not of that camp. I am of the camp of you see if you can work out a 1-year prove-it deal or a long-term contract with an easy out for the team after a season or two. And even that would worry me at this point, but that's an interesting thought. All right, guys, let's get into this. Again, if you did not hear the top of the show for some reason because you skipped over because of my boring voice, I want to remind you that both Danny Shimon and West Coast Phil Rainey are working on scouting reports for BearsBarroom.com that are tailored for us Chicago Bears fans. They're going to do the regular professional scouting reports of each player, but they will also share a few lines on how that player may or may not fit into the scheme of the Bears. And so one of the things they've been doing, especially West Coast Phil, who has not watched all of the Chicago Bears games like Danny and I have. He's been getting up to speed on what the Bears have done in the past season and getting to know Matt Nagy's offense and so forth, so that way we can all come up with scouting reports that are unique and highly tailored to the Chicago Bears football fan. So what we're going to do in this portion of the show is look at the combine performances, and I've asked Danny and Phil to talk about a player or two or three that impressed them at the combine or may have disappointed them at the combine. And again, we're kind of looking at this through the lens of Chicago Bears needs, but we don't necessarily have to keep it to that. Just let us know, because Ryan Pace professes to be a best player available type of player person. So it really, at this point, for the sake of our discussion, let's just talk about best players and players who don't fit into that category at all. So let me begin with Danny, who's gonna be evaluating quarterbacks for us. So Danny, what did you see at the combine? Who impressed you? What do you got to say?
Well, in terms of need, obviously it's not a high priority or need position for the Bears, having drafted Mitchell Trubisky last year. So. But in terms of the two quarterbacks that impressed me at the combine are probably 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, depending how you look at it. Josh Allen from Wyoming and Josh Rosen from UCLA. Allen, start with him. I mean, impressive size, 6'5", 237 pounds. Displayed the athleticism that in testing that you saw on tape, the way he can get in and out of trouble, can run away from pass rush, so on and so forth, and then, of course, short off his electric arm. He might have one of the best arms I've seen come out in the past 10 years in the draft. That's how good his arm is.
70 miles an hour. One scout said that he threw the ball. Is that wild?
And he had scouts and coaches both oohing and awing when he dropped this ball down the sidelines, maybe like 70 yards on it, and just hit the receiver in stride. I mean, you heard it in the dome. You heard coaches and scouts all oohing and awing on that throw. So quick release, like I said, elite arm strength. He really put on a show in terms of athleticism, and he's got the prototypical size, speed, strength, everything you look for in a quarterback. It's the only question about him is level of competition as well as his accuracy and an ability to throw it straight. So, and Josh Rosen, of course, another kid, he might actually have the cleanest and smoothest mechanics of the entire quarterback group. Good arm strength, displays a natural feel for the passing game, possesses an understanding of timing and ball placement, which not all the quarterbacks in this group have. So those two really stood out for me. No one really, for lack of a better word, bombed or had a bad combine. The one guy I was a little disappointed in was Louisville's Lamar Jackson. First of all, he didn't run a 40, which really I don't really care about quarterbacks running 40s, but I just kind of wanted to see, curious how fast he would run. The other thing is his accuracy was way off, and the other thing was he looked like he was kind of like aiming the ball instead of just letting it go and releasing it. He was throwing some lobs up in there when he should probably just throwing straight on a line on those out routes. But I mean, will it hurt him? Probably not. But just if I had to pick someone today, I was a little bit disappointed in his performance was Lamar Jackson, but not it's not like it's going to kill his draft stock or anything like that. So
Phil, a couple of these quarterbacks that Danny just mentioned play out in your part of the country, out in the West Coast. Do you want to share any analysis on either Allen or Rosen?
Allen, I agree. He looked, especially when he started throwing the ball, he looked really good. And but for the most part, I mean, Danny hit it right on the head, except I would kind of put Lamar Jackson on the borderline of bombing, because a lot of his throws were ducks or pheasants or whatever birds you want to call. He just didn't look comfortable, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were making him take drops that he's not used to doing, since he played in the shotgun offense, and he didn't have to, do 5 and 7, or even a lot of times even a 3-step drop. He just would catch the ball and throw it. So that exposed his weakness. He looked very uncomfortable when he had to take drops and throw the ball. His timing was always off. He didn't know how to put touch on the ball. There was some easy throws that quarterbacks should be making that he didn't make. So he looked kind of bad. And I think probably he didn't run the 40. I mean, because he doesn't want to be a receiver. And I think that's mainly why everybody wanted to see him run the 40, because they want to see how fast he is. So then that they could try to probably talk him into switching positions, which I don't think he should. I mean, he's a quarterback. He just needs to learn how to throw the ball from under center, and that the combine exposes weakness in that area.
Right. I mean, and that I find that to be comical, to be honest with asking him to play wide receiver. I mean, this kid can play quarterback. Now, is he ready to start, day one?
No.
Next year? No, he's not. He needs time. He needs to develop. But he's got, obviously, he's a great athlete. He's got an electric arm. And when he's, and this is something he needs to fix. He needs to fix his footwork. He needs to fix his throwing motion, in terms of, because sometimes he won't go all the way through. He won't follow through on his his throwing motion. So, and the ball can tailor up, down. So if he fixes his accuracy, he just needs time. But this kid has a chance to be a good quarterback.
It looks like everything came to him easy in college. I mean, it's probably because of the school he went to also, so there wasn't much competition. But when
my comp for him is Michael Vick. I mean, he is that electric with the ball.
Well, and I was about to say that when people are comparing you to Michael Vick, no, you don't need to play receiver. You're a quarterback. So
I totally agree.
I haven't seen a quarterback that electric with the ball in his hands since Michael Vick. So I mean, he runs away from defenders. He can juke defenders. I mean, it's crazy what he does with the ball in his hands. I think he's easy day 2. There's talk that he might go top of second round, possibly slight chance he might bottom of the first round, depending how many quarterbacks go in the top half of the first round of the draft. But no, he's a day 2 pick.
Okay, and Danny, in your analysis of these quarterbacks at the combine, was there anyone that impressed you that might be a good developmental draft pick for the Chicago Bears on day 3?
In terms of what he did at the combine, no, but I keep my eye on Mike White from Western Kentucky. Smart kid, he's got the size. Arm strength is not great. It's okay, but he played in a pro style system. Understands pro concepts in terms of offensive play calling and all that stuff. So he's a guy, if he's available, and again, with the Bears only going in the draft and only have 7 picks, now I wouldn't use one of those picks right now on a developmental quarterback. But if you trade down a couple rounds and you pick a couple of extra picks in the day 3, if he's out there, I wouldn't mind taking a shot at him.
Okay, very good. Let's move on now and talk running backs, and that falls under the bailiwick of West Coast Phil. West Coast Phil, give me some names, 2 or 3 names of running backs that impressed or disappointed you at this year's NFL Combine.
Aldo, I want to actually switch, because we were going to talk about running backs first and then have me talk about the receivers. So I want to switch for the simple fact that this ties into what I was saying earlier about the Bears' need and the priorities. And I think their priority is they really need some receivers really bad.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about them first, and then we'll switch to running backs, because I spent a lot of time watching.
West Coast Phil is calling an audible.
And I love it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm calling an audible because this really kind of is stuck in my gut as far as when I've been watching the film of the Bears, and Their biggest problem I saw the whole season is they struggled on third down and in the red zone. And a lot of it had to do with not being able to, throw the ball because they had nobody to throw the ball to. So I'm going to disagree with you and your priority where you said they needed a defensive back first.
Now, you're referring to an article I wrote at BearsBarroom.com where I prioritized the position groups that the Bears need, and I think I had cornerback first, offensive line second, and wide receiver third. But please go ahead.
I think they need a receiver first, and I think they need to draft with their first pick. I think they need to get a receiver because they were horrible on offense. In fact, I pulled up some stats here. They were, where was it? I'm looking at 32nd in the league in passing yards per game. They were 30th in first downs, and in third down percentage, they were 26, which all, like I said, all relates back to their inability to throw the ball and have an effective passing game. They did okay running the ball, but they were horrible throwing the ball. So I think the guys that impressed me at the combine, and I kind of concentrated more on guys that specifically fit their scheme of what they are trying to do. Simi Cobbs from Indiana, he looked really good to me. The other kid from SMU, Cortland Sutton. Those are two guys I think if they're going to draft a receiver, they really need to, hone in on which one of those guys. Everybody's saying Calvin Ridley. Yeah, Calvin Ridley's probably the best of the receivers in this class. But my only concern with Ridley is his size. And not the height, but I'm talking about the bulk. He lacks the physical frame. But if we're looking at specific players specifically for the Chicago Bears, they need to replace Kevin White, and those two guys seem to be more in that mold. You're either going to get a player in free agency or you're going to get them in the draft, because the best free agent receivers they're not going to get.
Right.
So you can take that off the table. They're not going to get Jarvis Landry. They're not going to get Sammy Watkins. They're not going to get anybody worth paying the kind of money you're going to pay for a free agent receiver.
I heard the Bears are in on Watkins. Now, whether they get him, it's a different story. But I heard they're in on Watkins.
I don't think they're going to get him.
But I think what they do is I think you attack it from both ways. And actually, to go back, I think the Bears' biggest need now is outside pass rusher, and then followed by receiver. Because what you're going to do, you only have one guy really, Leonard Floyd, who's coming off of an injury, as your premier pass rusher. You have a couple of the guys that are on the roster, but I mean, you need an outside pass rusher in a worse way. So I think with the Bears, this is my idea, where I think what they're going to do is they're going to attack receiver both in free agency, maybe get one or two veterans, and then they're going to go ahead and draft a kid. But I don't think they're going to go first round.
But what free agent receiver is worth getting and paying that kind of overpaying for? The only person they're looking at right now that seems to be viable is Albert Wilson from Kansas City, who used to be with
there is
Nagy.
There is no number one receiver in free agency right now that you would go and get. Even Allen Robinson. I mean, people, like we said earlier, he's coming off a torn ACL. The year prior to that, he had a subpar year. The year prior to getting hurt, he had one really good year, and that was 2015, where he had over 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. But other than that, I mean, he's been okay. He's been a guy. So
yeah, three years ago, and you're in the same position. Then why not just keep Kevin White? Then it just goes back
they're going to keep Kevin White. They're going to give him a chance to make the team.
I wouldn't touch Robinson with a 10-foot pole. Then the same thing goes to with Kevin White. Why give him a chance? He's had 3 chances since he's been drafted, and he's done nothing. And he's shown a history of getting hurt. Just cut bait. Go get a receiver in the draft.
The one thing,
a healthy receiver.
Yeah, and I just want to say I think they're gonna attack it both ends. They're gonna attack it via free agency. They're gonna attack it during the draft. But I think going back to Kevin White real quick, the thing about Kevin White, and a lot of people throw out the word injury prone, he hasn't really had these tears and muscle. I mean, basically what he's doing is he's got these freak accidents, right? He's got a broken leg, broke his shoulder. It's kind of similar to if you think about it, Quenton Nelson with the Chargers, right? Every year he'd get lacerated kidney, torn ACL, separated shoulder. or a broken collarbone. And then you just keep giving him a chance, And next thing you know, look at him, he exploded this year. So I'm not saying Kevin White's going to put up Keenan Allen numbers. I'm saying he's a talented kid. He's a talented kid.
How long should you wait for the guy to produce while you're leaking money? I mean, some of these guys
the money's already gone. The money's already
right.
gone. The only thing
you're making all my points. That's why it's like, okay, just get rid of the guy.
It's already washed. I mean, whether you pay him, you already paid him his bonus, right? So you have a talented kid. You use a 7th pick in the draft on. You got to at least give him a chance to see if he can overcome the bad luck and make the team.
How long are you guys, are Bears fans, how long are you guys willing to wait and be patient to see if a guy you drafted in the first round is going to pan out? I think
the issue with Kevin White is that the money for this year's contract is as Danny said, it's basically paid. So why not bring him to camp, see what kind of shape he's in, see if this shoulder injury is completely healed. Mitch Trubisky was on one of the podcast shows earlier this week, and he said that White was looking good. They've been spending some time out on the West Coast together, playing catch and so forth. There's a picture on Instagram of Kevin White. He looks ripped. And so from a health standpoint, it looks like he could be very close to 100% once preseason starts, if not 100%. If he can run.
I wish I had a violin sound effect right now, because I'd be playing it right now, because
But the point, Phil, is that, why not just bring him to camp and let him win a job or lose the job? Unless you get an offer for a 5th round, 6th round pick for him, I would keep him around and let him see if he can win a job. I mean, you've already made the investment monetarily and with the high draft pick.
But no one's going to offer the Bears a ham sandwich for him.
Right. Well, you're not just going to drop the guy.
Well, I agree with that part. Bring him into camp, but I wouldn't be holding out my hopes on him as far as producing.
I agree with that. I totally agree.
So
with
that's
that.
why I said draft a receiver. Because
there's no argument there that the Bears are going to draft at least 1 or 2 receivers. There's no doubt about that. The question is where in the draft are they going to invest on a 1st round pick at number 8? I highly doubt it, because the only guy even worth considering at that point is exactly. I agree with Danny there. So if they trade down in the 1st round, they find Ridley at let's say they trade with Buffalo for the 21st and 22nd pick. If they find Ridley down there, then that's a steal. Or if in the 2nd round they are drafting with with the Bears pick, if DJ Shark is there from LSU,
I was waiting for you to say his name. I was waiting for you.
Then all of a sudden you've got a burner, a guy that runs 4.34 with starter potential immediately, and so that could be a very intriguing scenario.
Bears need a speed guy who can stretch the defense, and you got possession guys. So the whole Jarvis Landry talk to me was that made no sense either. So.
Okay, well then if you're going to go for speed, just pure speed, then yeah, Shark makes sense. But I mean, now
in this draft, the top of the draft doesn't have the star-studded receiver. Ridley has a chance to be, but as of right now, I don't see him being a star number 1 receiver. But as you get later down in the draft, there is value, there's quality later down. There's those guys you mentioned, those big body guys, the Suttons, the Simi Cobbs. There's guys, I'm not talking about late day 2, early day 3.
Right.
Darren Carrington from Utah. Marquez Valdez Scanlon from I think it's USF, Troy Quinn from SMU. I mean, Javon Wims from Georgia. I mean, you can go on and on. There's a lot of. It's a deep position, but not high quality, I guess. So more quantity than quality, I guess you would say.
All right. Before we move to the running backs, I do want to add this other thought. There was a player who caught my eye at the combine. It's DJ Moore, the kid from Maryland. I mean, there were a number of other players. I can give you a list.
DJ Moore, yes, that's another good guy.
But that guy, he really impressed me in that in all of the major categories that players are tested for, he was a top 5 finisher in the 40-yard dash, the vertical leap, the broad jump, and so forth. This guy showed some athletic skills. Now, I don't do what you guys do, which is watched a ton of tape and so forth, so I can't tell you, against ex-college, when he was at Maryland, he had this outstanding game. But just based on what I saw at the combine, DJ Moore is a guy who could potentially become an NFL starter and maybe somebody to Chicago Bears could be looking at in round 2 if DJ Shark is not available. So let's
since we're still on the receiver, then you just brought up something that kind of made me scratch my head.
Okay.
The only drills that I pay attention to is the gauntlet, because they're actually catching the football, which is what these guys are going to be paid to do.
Mm-hmm.
The verticals and all that, I don't really care about. So that's why when you brought up DJ Moore, I kind of was like, didn't even really notice him, because all the rest of that stuff to me is, I understand why they do it, but the things that stood out to me and what I wrote down on my notes as far as who I thought impressed me and disappointed me was those on the field drills that you don't see in the paper. The guys that impressed me was Ray McLeod from Clemson and Christian Kirk. And
Kirk, I thought, had a great combine. Yeah, I agree there.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he had a great combine, because he, not in addition to all those measurables you're talking about, in the specific drills like the gauntlet, for instance, he made it look effortless the way he caught the ball. He caught the ball away from his body. Same with Ray McLeod. That's what I started doing. I wrote down all the guys. When I'm watching these guys catch the ball, they're catching the ball away from their body. Cortland Sutton, one of the guys that I'm thinking the Bears should look at. Simi Cobbs. In fact, when he ran through the gauntlet, he had really good concentration. There was this one high pass that the quarterback threw, and he snagged it. Some of these guys, when you saw them going through the gauntlet, and when they were dropping passes or passes were flying through their hands, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know why these guys are rated the way they are. So that's what I was looking at. And then when I looked at the guys who disappointed me in that specific drill, Lazard, he had a lot of drops. Shark, who, Danny, I hate to burst your bubble. I know you love this guy, but in that drill, he let way too many balls get in on his body. He caught them, but what separated him from the others, that's what I was looking at specifically. Deshaun Hamilton, he jogged through the drill.
Phil, I agree with you. That gauntlet drill is they should make that like a regular show on Saturday afternoons, because I could watch that particular drill. I could watch that all day long. I love it. I love to see the concentration and the focus, and to see the technical aspects. Are they staying on that line of scrimmage as they go down, or are they waving?
Exactly.
Where do they have their hands? Do they turn upfield after that last catch? Oh, there's so many cool things to watch in that. To me, it's more exciting than watching curling, which everybody's been talking about for the last 2 weeks on Twitter. Curling this, curling that. What the hell with curling? I don't want anything to do with curling. I want to see guys catching footballs. Danny,
one thing. I know DJ Shark is my man crush, but I have a man crush on someone that even supersedes DJ Crush, if you believe it or not.
Ooh.
And unfortunately, he didn't work out at the combine. It's Anthony Miller from Memphis.
Oh, yes.
I absolutely love this kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
5'11", 201 pounds, big hands, 10 and 5/8. This kid catches everything. He goes across the middle. He can play outside. He can play inside. I think he's dealing with an injury. I think that's why he didn't work out at the combine. But this kid he supersedes DJ Shark for me.
Well, and very quickly, East Coast Phil has a video up on Miller that you can catch at bearsballroom.com. Draft Dr. Phil has a section called Draft Dr. Phil's Desirables, and he's done cut together some videos of some of the players he really likes in this upcoming draft, and Miller is one of those.
This will be a draft where in the 3rd or 4th round, a star will be drafted.
Yeah, I agree.
Receiver will be drafted.
And I think the Bears better get themselves a 3rd-round pick.
I hope so.
All right, now West Coast Phil, do you want anything else regarding wide receivers that you wanted to chat about before we move to running backs?
No, we'll move to running backs, and we'll start with the obvious. The guy that impressed me overall the most was Saquon Barkley.
He's worthy of being the top pick in the draft. Would you not say?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, we agree on something finally.
Yeah, he was. To me, he was probably the stud of the combine on offense.
Yeah, no doubt.
He was a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Because he ran a 4.41 40. His vert was good. He benched, and then just the on-field drills too. He was impressive. Good quick cuts and stuff like that. And those drills they do with the bags, and Now I have a man crush on him. I'm talking about man crushes because he looked really good in the combine, and I've seen film on him too and game film on him. So yeah, I think he's going to go to the Giants. They'd be stupid not to draft him because that's one of their needs too.
I agree. I totally agree.
Actually, I was down in Indy. I was down there for the first 2 days of the combine, and rumor was floating in those hallways that he's going number 1.
Really, to Cleveland, huh?
I wouldn't do it. I have a thing where I don't take running backs in the top half of the draft, but I think he's going number 1 in Cleveland.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Today they traded for Jarvis Landry. Obviously, they traded for Tyrod Taylor.
Right.
So they traded away Deshaun Kaiser. So they have their bridge quarterback, and I think at the 4th pick they're going to probably try and get their quarterback at number 1. They're going to take Saquon Barkley.
Now that you're bringing that up, that's why it's going to be interesting when the draft starts to see either the Giants try to move up or someone try to move ahead of them that also needs a running back, because I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the number 1 overall pick. Is just, to me, is going to be interesting to see who's going to take him, who's either going to move up to take him, because you just brought up something. I wasn't thinking that with the Browns because I looked at their trade for Tyrod Taylor to give them the bridge quarterback so that they could draft Sam Darnold and groom him. That's what I was looking at, because that's probably their number 1 need is the quarterback. And then when they traded for Demarius Randall too, they filled another need in the secondary. And then I think because they have 2 picks in the first round, the 1st and the 4th, they're going to get depth at either those positions, or they're going to draft the offensive lineman that they need as well.
All right. So I believe that Dorsey's in love with Josh Allen. I think if there's any inkling that Allen's going to be going to if the Giants are possibly trading down with the team that's going to trade up, say Buffalo or Arizona or any team that needs their quarterback, I think if Dorsey feels it, and if the rumors are true, if he does like Allen, I think you can see him, because he still has a boatload of picks. He's got 10 picks, I believe, in this draft.
Oh yeah,
I can still see him flipping with the Giants, moving up to number 2, secure Allen after he secures Barkley. And I think that would just be a phenomenal draft for the Browns.
I think though if the Browns draft Barkley, they're going to get a lot of hate from New York. The guys that disappointed me the most as far as the running backs in the combine was Darius Geis and Rashad Penny. Penny had a good 40, but he was horrible in the change of direction drills, those cone drills, and him and Geis, they just didn't do well as far as they ran over the cones when they were making cuts. So that kind of it was a glaring mistakes to me. You're supposed to I don't know if you guys watch those on the field drills, but especially with the skill position players, when they asking these guys to make cuts at the cones, those guys like either were kicking them or they were just shortcutting. They were making their cuts right over the top of the cone, and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't look too good." And those 2 guys, I saw a lot of it, so they were my disappointments as far as running backs at the combine. I mean, not saying they're not going to be good running backs when they're actually asked to do what they're supposed to do, but as far as combine specific, they didn't look good at the combine.
I'm glad you said that, West Coast Phil, because I want to again remind our listeners that what West Coast Phil is doing here is that he's providing us evaluations on what he saw from combine drills and so forth. So a guy like who you just mentioned, Darius Geis, who I've had my eye on because I like his pass catching ability. He could turn out to be a really nice pro and could be a steal for the Bears if he's, available there in the 4th round with one of their 2 4th-round picks, or even drops to the 5th round, given that the Bears are probably going to be in need of a running back with Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen as their 1 and 2, and maybe Benny Cunningham not coming back as the 3rd stringer. So we will see. Anything else you want to add on running backs, West Coast Phil?
Yes and no. I mean, the guy that had the best 40 time was Nyheim Hines, but it goes back to what do they say? You can't take some of these measurables. You can't take too serious because he ran the best 40, but that doesn't make him the best back. So I think a lot of times people start putting too much weight on the combine or these one event deals, it goes back to you got to watch the film. Just because the guy doesn't run fast doesn't make him, a great player at the position he plays, because his grade is what it is for a reason. So, yeah, he had a good time in the 40, and he was impressive in that one specific drill. But in all the rest of them, where was the guy? So,
well, and I want to correct myself, too. I think I said that Darius Geis might be available in day 3. Probably not likely. Would you agree with that, Danny?
Right. No, Darius Geis would probably be a second or third round pick. But the guy to keep an eye on, in terms of the Bears, a guy I heard that they do have an interest in is Ronald Jones from USC.
Yeah.
They like, and that's why, remember, although we had a conversation, I don't know if it was a Senior Bowl or if we had on one of our podcasts, where I said, Jordan Howard, good player, I just don't see him fitting in this scheme.
Yes.
And players like Ronald Jones, and I know the Bears staff loved Saquon Barkley, but who doesn't?
Right.
But I know they love Saquon. So they want backs that can be pass catchers, that can go out and split out and run routes either from the slot or split out to the numbers. So keep an eye on Ronald Jones. Had a disappointing 40. I thought he was faster than that.
4.65, I think it was that time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think he got hurt and he couldn't finish the rest of the drill. So he's a kid that I know he's got comparisons to Jamal Charles just because of the size and shape and all that stuff. But he's a kid who's got some home run speed and on tape, in pads, and then he's a guy who can catch the ball in the backfield. So I don't see the Bears going high for running back, but if you never know what happens from now until the draft.
But I don't see him being available. I think either Tampa Bay or the Jets are going to take him first.
I'm sorry, West Coast Phil, you're talking about Ronald Jones being taken?
Yeah, because they draft in front of the Bears, and the Bears don't really need a running back. They're drafting for depth, but those two teams actually need a running back.
Yeah.
Like bad. So I don't see Ronald Jones being around by the time the Bears are drafting to think about picking a running back for depth.
I totally agree that the Bears are not going to touch a running back in for the first 2 rounds. Again, if we hear news that
he'll be gone by then. Yeah. He'll be long gone by then.
And if Jordan Howard is traded, or if Jordan Howard, God forbid, falls down some stairs or something like that, then maybe all of a sudden that draft board is going to take a dramatic different look for the Bears. But yeah, I agree that Ronald Jones is probably not going to be a Chicago Bear, and neither is Darius Geis. All right, let's move now to tight ends, which is an impressive group of players, I thought anyway, and one that presents all sorts of possibilities for the Chicago Bears if they are interested in finding a Robin to Adam Shaheen's Batman, or vice versa. What did you see over at the Combine, Danny, with the tight ends?
Let me guess. You're talking about a kid from Penn State.
Yeah,
maybe?
Be him.
It was funny because I'm watching. I guess I could go through all these drills, right? And first of all, he ran a 40 that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
Okay, so because he doesn't run that fast on tape, but whatever. He ran the 40 good. But I was watching him, all these tight ends work out, and I'm like, man, would the Bears go back to the well again at tight end? They used a 2nd-round pick on Adam Shaheen last year. To get a guy like Gesicki, or even my top-rated tight end, which is Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State, you have to go late 1st round, early 2nd round. So I don't see the Bears using a high pick on a tight end.
Agree.
Again, I could be surprised, but we knew Gesicki was going to be one of the top tight ends in the draft. But a couple of guys that caught my eye were Mark Andrews from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. 6'5", 256 pounds, good arm length, ran a 4.67 40, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Yeah. But when you watch him run the gauntlet, looks like a natural pass catcher. Like I said, big size, good size with big hands, offers a nice big target for the quarterback. He's got good movement skills. Does a nice job of breaking in and out of his routes. Quickly in and out of his routes, and he just knows how to work the zone. He knows how to see coverage and settle into his zone and give the quarterback a nice big target to throw to. So I think Andrews from Oklahoma is a nice little prospect there.
A great red zone receiver too. I'm looking at NFL.com. Red zone rainmaker, it says here, with a touchdown in every 5 catches. So certainly somebody to keep an eye on there. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was Mayfield's top target and sometimes in games. So I think his games are at 8 catches and 7 catches, and so. And the other kid that kind of caught me by surprise was this kid Jordan Thomas from Mississippi State. Big kid, 6'5", 265 pounds. Ran a 4.740 for someone that size. That's pretty good. Again, talented athlete, terrific size, speed combo, and he was actually a wide receiver during his collegiate career. So he was swapped over to tight end. I think because of need, they had injuries and they needed someone to play tight end, and he just moved over there. So being a receiver, obviously big athletic, downfield target. He's got a nice huge catch radius. He's got the speed to stretch the seam, so he can run down the middle of the field there. Looked real smooth and natural, hands catching in the gauntlet drills. And it was quick off, and when I watched some of his tape when I got back, he's quick off the line of scrimmage, at the snap, and he can get upfield quickly. So another kid that I keep an eye on. This is more of a, day 3 maybe pick, but another guy that caught my eye. So in terms of the tight end group.
Yeah, Jordan Thomas is, again, this is according to NFL.com and Lance Zierlein, who does most of their draft analysis. He writes that he's probably going to sink to the 6th or 7th round. Apparently there were some off-the-field issues, and he quoted an AFC team regional scout as saying there's no way that I would put my name to him, to my boss. I don't trust him on or off the field. But in terms of how he performed at the combine, you're absolutely right. He showed some flashes of being a NFL player, and let's just hope he gets his stuff together, because he'd be bypassing a great opportunity to change his life around. West Coast Phil, do you have any thoughts on any of the tight ends that you saw, or should we move to the offensive line, because you are in charge of offensive guards, a draft needy spot for the Chicago Bears right now, I'll tell you that.
Kind of liked the kid from South Dakota State, Dallas Goedert.
Oh yeah, he was at
he's my top rate tight end.
Right.
He didn't participate in the combine
because he was injured at Senior Bowl. Yeah, I believe, if I could.
I love that kid. Just real quick, I love that kid, Dallas Goedert. I mean, he reminds me a little bit of a poor man's Travis Kelce.
So I mean, and speaking of which fits right in with the Bears, since Nagy came from the Chiefs, and Travis Kelce was one of the prime targets for Alex Smith. So I guess I got some ESP there going on, because that guy, he kind of stands out to me from the Senior Bowl too. But yeah, okay. Transitioning, we'll go to the lineman. The only guy that really stood out for me was the kid from UTEP. Hernandez. I mean, he's a stud. The rest of those guys, as we talked about earlier in the beginning, you don't know where these guys are going to go. There's too much, iffiness as far as what you see from these kids, just based on the fact that the spread offense has kind of made it hard to evaluate these guys.
Well, you're overlooking Quenton Nelson, though, from Notre Dame. I mean, this guy could go in the top 5.
Right, but I don't see him being available when the Bears get him, because I think he's probably going to be the first offensive lineman to come off the board.
Clearly, you were impressed with Quenton Nelson's combine, although he didn't run the 40. But did you see enough in his drills to definitively say, okay, he's the number one? He was the most impressive guard at the combine, or do you think that Will Hernandez?
Will Hernandez impressed me way more.
Based on what happened at the combine, it's hard to argue that. I mean, Hernandez had a heck of a combine. Now, I don't think he's going to go in the top 15 picks in the NFL draft. I think he's a lower first round draft pick. So unless they trade down, they're not gonna go after Will Hernandez. Anyone else at that guard position that you saw at the combine that you either feel like the Bears should target in the draft somewhere, whatever round it is, or a guard that you feel keep your hands off of this guy because he just did not look very impressive at the combine, and buyer beware?
Well, he didn't really stand out at the combine as much, but another guy that I would keep my eye on is Isaiah Wynn from Georgia.
Oh, yeah. And he looks like he might, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, he might fall to the second round, perhaps, although a lot of people are saying he could be chosen
he could sneak in the bottom of the first round.
Right.
Slight chance, but he's most likely going in the second round. Actually, West Coast, I got a guy for you, a guard. I kind of pointed him out to you at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you remember him or not, but Wyatt Teller from Virginia Tech. First of all, his measurables caught my eye: 6'4", 314 pounds, 34-inch arms, 10 and 1/4 hand size, 30 reps on the bench. So he's got some good strength there. But you put on his tape, and this kid will move people. And his pass blocking could need some little refinement. But again, he's a college kid. He's going to get coaching. He's going to get coached up. So, but he's a kid that maybe third round, fourth round range. If they have a need, that's a kid I'd like to keep my eye on.
This guy has been described as having a nasty disposition, which is something that I love to see in my offensive guards.
That is my top priority in my offensive lineman. If you're nasty, you're going up there.
Yeah, well, then that's why the Will Hernandez and Isaiah Wynn are better.
Oh, yeah,
without a doubt. Nastier, so.
Without a doubt. I think Danny's point is that Wyatt Taylor could be a steal down in the fourth, fifth round draft, fourth or fifth round of the draft, and somebody that the Bears might develop into a potential starter. But am I right, Danny? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
He's not a top of the first, second round guy for me. No, he's like a third, fourth round guy, something like that.
All right, cool.
Right, but because that's one of the positions of need for the Bears, I would think they would get one of those other two guys first.
Definitely, I have no argument with you there, Phil. If the Bears come off a free agency without an offensive lineman who can play center, and then that way Cody Whitehair moves to guard or can play guard so that we leave Cody Whitehair at the preferred position center, then the Bears definitely are going to be selecting a guard in one of those picks in the first or second round, because if they don't, then what are they doing? What are they doing to our quarterback?
Because who's the best free agent guard out there that's available?
Andrew Norwell.
You're gonna overpay regardless of who you get.
Absolutely. And Andrew Norwell, who is heavily rumored to be going to New York Giants, so he's probably gone. And so then after that, you're looking at guys like Zach Fulton, who played for Matt Nagy with the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're looking at a bunch of guys who have had injury issues like Justin Pugh and on and on. So yeah, the Bears, when they released Josh Sitton, I was shocked, because that it just didn't make sense that they would release him at this point. I know that they were saving some money because there was a bonus coming up, but it just seemed very, very risky. So I hope that the Bears come out of this with an offensive guard who can immediately protect Mitchell Trubisky, and there not be any concerns about his health moving forward. I'm a little worried about this possession. Very, very worried, actually.
Well, I think part of it was they gambled because before free agency started and they were looking at players that are going to be available, they're like, we have to have some money. No.
They've got tons of money. I mean, they started with about $40 million, and now with the players that they've dropped, they're at $60 million and headed towards $100 million if they make more cuts. So I don't think money was the issue. I simply think that the reason they cut Josh Sitton, and Danny, jump in here, is that I think that they thought that he was fat. He's not a very pleasant guy in the clubhouse, and they wanted to go with a more athletic offensive guard. Danny, do you disagree with that?
Wow. Unpleasant guy. I mean, what has he done to you, Aldo?
He didn't shower.
Actually, I've heard the opposite. I mean, I heard Sitton was a good guy. He was a team captain last year. I think what this offense will do is they want athletic guards. They want guys who can easily get out, pull, and lead block, and so on and so forth. And Sitton was getting up there in age. Sitton was still okay as a pass blocker, but in terms of getting out and kind of like God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The kid who's playing for the Chargers now, Matt Slauson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Same thing. Good rugged veteran, but he had lost some of his foot speed, and that's why they ended up upgrading with Sitton when they got rid of him. So I think and plus his $8 million was a bit too much for a guard at this time in his career. So I think what the Bears are going to do, I think you're right. And a key thing for for their plans, if you take a look at or hear what Ryan Pace said, they asked him where Cody Whitehair is going to play next year, and he said that's still it's still in the process of being determined. So basically, what that means to me is if they get a center, he's playing guard. If they get a guard, he's playing center. So, and I have a center for you guys that I loved at the combine.
Nice segue.
Well, I think because the Bears' offensive scheme, they're going to go more towards the RPO route.
Right.
And so they need a lot of linemen that can move, that are athletic, and that's why I said before too. I think part of it is they're clearing room because then they either through free agency or mainly in the draft, they're going to go for some of these younger, faster guys.
I agreed with that.
Don't have injury history either.
All right, I'm on pins and needles waiting for who the center is that Danny Shimon has identified as a potential player for the Chicago Bears. Who is it, Danny?
Well, the guy I just first of all, his combine caught my eye, and then I ended up going back to the tape, and I just fell in love with the player himself. Not DJ Shark or Anthony Miller, but
it's not that serious of a man crush.
not that serious, no. But James Daniels, center from Iowa.
Yeah.
Big guy, 6'3", 306 pounds. Good, good wingspan. Athletic center, like I said, with size and length. Just my notes that I jotted down. I was watching him play. Power to drive defensive linemen 3 yards back post snap as he springs out of his stance. So he's athletic. He's powerful. He's got the athleticism to execute reach blocks and free technique defensive tackles, which is a very hard block to do if you're a center and you're trying to reach the defensive or a three technique on the outside there.
That's almost impossible.
So I saw him do that a couple times. So he's able to quickly leak out to the second level of the defense. Good competitive toughness. He will finish his blocks. You like nasty. He might not be Will Hernandez nasty, but he will finish his blocks. He will bury his guy. He'll drive him into the ground. Solid hand technician, good hand placement. He secures a chest plate. The defender keeps him at arm's length, keeps his chest clean. A very, very clean, and of course comes out of Iowa, right? So they produce very good offensive linemen. So I think this guy, if you get him in the third round, he's a starter day one, in my opinion. But he has such a great combine. He might even go in the second round now.
Yeah, he played a little light for his position, didn't he, Danny, at Iowa? I mean, the one thing that always concerns me about these quick, athletic offensive linemen is Hronis Grasu. That was the epitome of drafting a quick-footed offensive lineman and it being a total bust. I mean, the very first snap I saw Grasu take at center for the Chicago Bears, he was pushed back into the lap of the quarterback, and his functional strength just never got much better. And then he complained about his rookie years that he was just so focused on the plays and he would know the playbook better. Well, it just never happened for him. He's a third-round bust, and so that from a fan perspective, I'm not a professional like you guys are. It just worries me that drafting these kind of light mobile linemen are just not going to have the functional strength for these defensive tackles who are just getting stronger and faster.
Well, the thing with Daniels is he's 6'3" and 306 pounds right now. And that's before he gets into an NFL camp and starts going through their program, their training program, and adding more muscle, more strength. Grasu, I believe, came in from Oregon under 300 pounds. So they had to add weight on him to get him up to where Daniels is at this moment. So, and one thing with Oregon, obviously, we talked about the light, quick offensive linemen. That's what they like, is really light, quick offensive linemen. But Iowa plays more of a traditional, pro-style offense, and they have linemen that come out, sometimes ready to start right away. So, again, just a guy that caught my eye when I saw his tape. I liked him even more. So, the Bears might draft a guard and just keep, Whitehair at center, which is fine by me too. But if they do go the center route, this is a guy to keep an eye on.
All right. Any other centers that you want to touch on before we move to offensive tackle, which is also under your area of expertise here for our scouting reports?
Not really. Let's just go offensive tackle position.
Go for it.
All right. As we were talking earlier, this year might be the least impressive group of offensive tackles that I've seen come out recently.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of depth and there's no one I think that will go in the top 10, possibly not even the top 15 of this draft. But for me right now, the top offensive tackle is Connor Williams from Texas, and he's the one who also had a pretty good combine as well. Yeah. The thing about Williams is he's a 3-year starter. He's got the height, size, speed, and everything you want. Natural athlete, good quick feet. He's got the ability to bend and move laterally. Good flexibility. Gets real low in his crouch when he bounces up out of it and is ready to attack. Quick out of his stance, gets out to the second level, finds a defender, seals off the linebacker, creates that running lane for the running back. So athletically and on his film, everything you see about him, you like. But my only concern about him is he's a little on the light side. He's 296 pounds right now. Arms aren't the length that I like my offensive tackles to be the only 33-inch arms. Yeah. So he might project better at inside as a guard. At a guard position. Yeah, but he is someone that I would start off at left tackle, and if he doesn't make it, I can move him into inside at guard. But he's an offensive lineman, offensive tackle that caught my eye at the combine. Another guy that I liked, and this continues from my Senior Bowl week, was Joe Nopum from TCU.
I like that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, continues to impress me. He's got length and he's got the ability to play outside on the island. And he does a good job of keeping defenders off his chest. Like I said, lateral agility, can mirror and pass protection. So the thing about him is he tough enough? Is he strong enough to handle it? So that's something we have to keep in mind. But he had also from athletic testing aspect, he had a good combine as well. There's a number of guys that caught my eye. Now, there's this beast from West Georgia, Desmond Harrison.
Yeah.
This kid is 6'6", okay? He's got, 3 limbs for arms, 34-inch arms, 10 3/8 hands. He is a gifted athlete. I mean, this guy
he could play tight end.
He's just a natural, smooth athlete.
Yeah.
The thing about him, though, he's got a ton of red flags off the field.
Oh, my God. He missed 2 years of school. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. He was a JUCO All-American, transferred to Texas in 2013, suspended on 2 separate occasions in 2014, and didn't even play a single game. Then spent the next 2 years out of football. So, so 2017 was his, first time playing. But, in terms of just size, athleticism, obviously he's a project. He's nowhere near NFL ready. But as a guy, he might get it in the 7th round, maybe even like an undrafted free agent.
Pass.
How bad the red flags are.
Pass.
A guy you can put on the
pass.
He's not starting week 1.
Pass.
Right,
I wouldn't even touch pass. No way. As soon as you said he spent 2 years out of football, I was done. I'm like, okay, next. Move on.
You might be able to get him as an undrafted free agent, which then could be one of those steals. But, all right, so the other guy I liked was Greg Senat out of Wagner.
I'm sorry, who was that again?
Senat.
Yeah, okay.
Out of Wagner.
Yeah.
Another kid who's got the size, speed ratio, raw athlete though, former basketball player, but he's displayed the good quickness in the passing drills, slides, and get to a set point real quick. So athleticism allows him to quickly adjust in terms of for change of direction. So it's another kid that more so of a developmental kid. Like I said, this is a group that I wasn't really impressed with.
Yeah.
But you might be able to get, some of these late round steals, gems that you can coach up and develop, and they can turn into future starters for you.
Exactly. When you make an investment in an offensive line coach like Harry Heastan, bringing in a guy like Greg Senat in the 7th round or as an undrafted free agent is a good investment. Let Harry Heastan and that new training staff, add some more strength on this young man and let Heastan, do his thing, and maybe you get yourself a future at least. A future swing tackle, somebody who could help out down the line.
Right. Another kid that caught my eye athletically, but his tape doesn't really do much for me, is Quenton Miller from UCLA.
Okay.
Athletically, he fits the criteria of what you want in a left tackle. Very good size, he's got the length, utilizes his long arms to protect his chest, uses defenders' momentum to carry him upfield. So he plays well, but he's got some stiffness in his hips.
6'9".
He doesn't really,
he's huge.
Yeah, Yeah, but he doesn't. And the thing is, he doesn't sink his hips in pass protection.
Right.
So he gets his pad level elevated and allows the defensive lineman to get in under his pads and rock him backwards. So he might struggle with speed off the edge. So I see him more as a right tackle prospect than a left tackle, but definitely a guy who's got the size and the frame that you want at an offensive tackle position, but more so on the right side than the left side.
West Coast Phil, I'm sure that you're very, very disappointed in Danny because he did not bring up our guy from Humboldt. Yeah, from Humboldt University, yeah. Alex Kappa.
I knew he wasn't going to bring him up. So.
Well,
I was debating on whether I was going to bring him up. So I'm glad you brought him up.
Well, no, I talked a lot, so I figured I'd give you something to talk about.
There you go. Wow, how sweet of you.
Well, he's a project.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
He worries me in the passing game. And because the NFL is more of a pass happy league now, and given the Bears scheme is going to change dramatically, at least I hope they go more balanced than they did last year. I don't, and because that's an immediate need for this team, I don't see them getting him. You only can take on project guys on the offensive line when you already have a decent offensive line and you have time. Yeah. The Bears don't have time. They can't wait to develop offensive linemen. They have to get guys that they can almost plug and play almost immediately. And with a new coaching staff too, you have to force these guys to be ready to play quicker, because I don't think, as you guys are Bears fans and I'm not, I don't think you guys can wait too much longer.
Well, I mean, right now with the state of the Bears, you've got two tackles and Charles Leno, who is just signed in a contract extension, and he is going to be the left tackle, whether Bears fans like it or not. He's going to be the left tackle for the Bears for the foreseeable future. There's no changing that. Over at right tackle, you got a player that Bears fans are always arguing about. You got one camp that hates him, and you got another camp that says, he's probably the best we can do right now. Nobody loves the guy. And so, if you can bring in a right tackle here you can plug and play, then bye-bye Bobby Massey. You now have become the swing tackle for the Chicago Bears. But
that's why I said they need somebody right away, because I'm looking at their depth chart right now, and you just mentioned at the right tackle, there's nobody behind Massey. So.
There isn't. They've definitely have some issues there on the offensive line. I don't think Danny or I will argue with you on that, but I do think that, and you guys, and maybe even Danny will debate me on this. I think when it comes down to the Chicago Bears' two offensive tackles, Leno and Massey, is that these guys are about as good as the average NFL offensive tackle pairing. And what I mean by that is right now it just seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that when it comes to offensive tackles in the NFL, we're going through a lull in terms of talent. There's some really good ones at the top, and then after that there's just a big drop off.
Yep. Phil was talking about earlier.
That's right.
Phil, you want to compound on or just explain what you were saying earlier about the offensives in college and what they're doing now with these tackles?
What are they doing with them? Not much as far as teaching them, I just don't. I don't like the. I mean, I don't know how you put this. The spread offense is basically killing the NFL, right? Simply put,
killing the offensive tackle position, I think.
Right. Well, the whole offensive line to me. I mean, whether it's a guard or tackle, that offense is killing guys being able to develop into quality linemen when they get to the NFL. Plus, now with the rules too, where you can't even talk to these guys in the off season, you can't develop these guys. When are they going to have time to develop? That's why it goes back to what I was saying before. The Bears are in the position where, and like I said, I'm looking at their depth chart right now. They're losing two guys on their line to free agency, and the other guys, from what your guys are saying, they're just average. Mm-hmm. So they need to hit a home run when it comes to getting an offensive lineman. And the closest you're going to get is the guys we were already talking about, whether it's the guard or the tackles. So they don't have time to wait.
Yeah, my opinion on this is that it's impossible for them to hit a home run just because there aren't any home run hitters out there in the draft.
I meant in the aspect that, they're not going to be – I'm not talking about Pro Bowl as far as home run, but I'm talking about guys who are going to be serviceable and not get Trubisky killed, right away.
Well, and I think that the best hope for the Chicago Bears is Harry Hiestand, the offensive line coach that they brought back to the team after some very successful years at Notre Dame. He's the guy that is hopefully going to take Bobby Massey from a D+ or C- to a C+ or a B-, and Charles Leno Jr. from a C- to a B-. That I think is the biggest hope that the Chicago Bears should have when it comes down to offensive tackles, because there just isn't a plug and play type of player available either in free agency or in this draft. So
I think to give you guys some hope, all of this is going to come down to scheme now. The scheme is going to change in such a way that it's going to cover up a lot of these guys' flaws off the bat, to where they can develop down the line. I think that was what was missing with the coaching staff last year.
You think?
Yeah. That's what I was going to add to your comment. While Houston is an important hire, I think Matt Nagy and his scheme and his play calling will also help.
That's going to make a huge difference.
Right. So a lot of 3-step drops, a lot of bubble screens, thrown out in the flat, so on and so forth. So get the ball out of Trubisky's hands real quick. So
but,
I think that's going to help out as well.
Well, and we could talk about this for hours. So I'm just going to move on the conversation. We got West Coast Phil now moving us to the defensive backs, safeties, and cornerbacks. And we've got good news out of Hallisall. I think most Chicago Bears fans think it's a good news in that Kyle Fuller has been tendered a transition tag, which allows the Chicago Bears to match any offer that Kyle Fuller, who will officially be a free agent on Wednesday, allow the Bears to match any offer that he gets. And so it's likely that Kyle Fuller will remain with the Chicago Bears, but the Bears are still in need of cornerbacks at the safety position. I personally think that they've got some great promise with Adrian Amos and Eddie Jackson in the safety position. So, West Coast Phil, if you don't mind, do you want to please start with the cornerbacks who you saw at the Combine, who gave you some sense of appreciation for their talents?
Yes, and this I guess I kind of have to go back. If you're right, Aldo, and their priority on defense, they have to draft Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Ooh,
I would love that kid.
I would too. The hairs on my arms just all stood at attention.
And if they don't get him, then it would have to be either him or Denzel Ward from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Those two guys are, I would say, are 1-2 on the board at that position. Because you just said it, the safety position, I think they're okay, but the corners, they need, because Amuka Moore is a free agent now, right?
That is correct.
Yep.
Right. So that's where their big need is, on the other side. And if they keep Fuller, then I think they'll be okay. And then I also think it would help their pass rush too. So, because if they're locking guys up on the back end, then it'll give those guys in the front end a little more time. So I'm thinking Minkah Fitzpatrick or bust.
Now let me ask you this, West Coast Phil. Okay,
now you're going to start some crap there.
Yeah. Regarding Minkah Fitzpatrick, now he only played a handful of downs, a handful of snaps at that cornerback position. Do you feel confident that if the Bears or any NFL team draft him at that to play cornerback, that he can move in and be a plug and play player there?
Yes, his length is the key. He's 6'1", 201 pounds. He can match up with any outside guy easily.
Mm-hmm.
And because what I've seen of him on film, he kind of already played both positions, somewhat, and also the guy, he's a hitter, Mm-hmm. I think you can't miss with him. He's the best DB on the board in this draft.
Yeah,
if the Bears have a chance to draft Minkah Fitzpatrick, Ryan Pace should run a 4.240 up to the plate and hand that card in.
I agree.
This kid is not only versatile, he can play corner, outside corner, he could play the slot, he could play safety. He's a leader on defense. This kid is like they say, too good to be true sometimes, right? So if they can get him, this kid will be a cornerstone on the Bears defense. But unfortunately, I just don't see how he drops to the Bears.
Yeah, I don't see
unless
it either.
There's a run on quarterbacks. Unless teams start going crazy and 4 quarterbacks go, ahead of the Bears, then there's a chance he might slip. But again, but getting back to real quick, West Coast Phil, Denzel Ward, I like his athleticism. I like his speed. I like his quick feet. I like his cover ability. 191 pounds, man. He looks like a slot corner to me in terms of size. I don't think he can handle the big receivers out on the numbers.
Have you seen that guy hit?
Yeah, but I mean, he comes up and he shoulder pops. He's not like a devastating, knock you back, rock out hitter. I mean, he'll come up and he'll shoulder pop you, but can he handle a big?
Watch the film against Maryland and then get back to me.
But that's fine. But who's he covering? Is he covering a 6'2", 6'3" receiver? Like, say, I don't know, throw a big receiver out there, like a Des Bryant or like a Mike Evans or a Larry Fitzgerald. I think those guys will just go up and get the ball over him. That's my only concern. That's my only concern about Denzel Ward. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, he's 5'10". I mean, so he does have a little size.
Right.
But I think he's as Deion Sanders says, he's got some dog in him.
Yeah.
That you can't coach.
Right.
And so I think that makes a big difference in he's probably gonna burn you sometimes too, because he's gonna be a little overly aggressive because of him having some dog in him. But I think the more solid overall, well-rounded guy is Fitzpatrick.
No doubt.
But I mean, if you can't get him, I would go after Ward or even Josh Jackson from Iowa.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Josh Jackson, because the word is that his value dipped a little bit at the combine, and I think it was I wrote in my notes here. Oh darn, I can't find it. But he ran a
tight-hipped, high cut.
Yeah, okay, and he ran a 4.56 on the 40, which placed him 27th in the event among quarterbacks. Now, that's probably placing too much value on the 40-yard dash, but nonetheless, the word is that his value did drop. His value did drop a little bit. So, but he's still definitely a first-round talent.
Yeah, and since you brought up the 40-yard dash too and placing too much emphasis, it goes back to the tape and these guys actually playing football.
Right.
I mean, you kind of almost always have to go back to that, because I think there's too much emphasis put on the combine and these measurables. And I mean, they to me, they play a small percentage in the overall bigger picture of whether you draft these guys or not. And I think that's where we all get lost in what's the latest event that happened and how they did in that event. And we completely forego the whole body of work during the course of a season or even the course of their college career. So, I mean, yeah, his 40 wasn't great, but I mean, there's a lot of guys who don't put up great numbers in 40-yard dash and stuff running in a straight line, but they play fast when it comes time to play football. Because if we went by 40-yard dash times, then Jerry Rice shouldn't have been drafted, if you ask me. I mean, the guy wasn't the fastest receiver, but you guys have seen him play. He made his living off of 2-yard slants, and then he's taking it 80 yards down the field, and you're reading his name tag. So, I mean, I don't put too much stock in that stuff. I've seen the guy's tape, and he can play. And those three guys we were talking about, they're the top three guys as far as corners in filling a need for the Bears.
Very good. All right, we're going to move on now to defensive line and linebackers, which is Danny's forte. And so, Danny, why don't you just pick a position and let us know who impressed or did not at the Combine.
All right, so the obvious names I'm just going to throw out here, but I don't think it's going to be a Bear selection, and B, I don't think he really fits their scheme that much, is Deron Payne from Alabama. That kid just looks powerful.
Wow, yes.
Powerful, smooth athlete. So the reason I say he's on I see him more of a like a 5 technique in the Bear scheme. Could he play some nose tackle? He might, but I see him more as a 5 technique. He's only 6'2", so I'm not ruling it out, but obviously he's one of the top defensive linemen. But getting back to some guys that stood out, again, I'm going to go back to the Senior Bowl. Another kid that I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl is Nathan Shepard from Fort Hays State. Yeah. He had a good start of the week, and then unfortunately got injured during the week and wasn't able to play. But again, just seeing him go through the drills and then watching some of his tape, I love his quickness off the snap. A very active, athletic body. He can pursue laterally down the line of scrimmage, has the power to bully offensive linemen back into the backfield, both in the run game and as a bull rusher. So he's a kid that continues to capture the eyes of scouts and of the NFL team. So some concerns with him are, obviously still raw, still developing as a pass rusher, level of competition. How much time will he need to adjust to the NFL level? So that's a couple of concerns right off the bat you have to think about with Nathan Shepard, but definitely a kid that is impressed since the Senior Bowl. Another kid that for me is somewhat flying under the radar, and this is out in West Coast Phil's neck of the woods, is Harrison Phillips from Stanford.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
Love him.
6'4", 307 pounds. He's got 34-inch arms, big hands. Did 42 reps on the bench. Again, I just say these test results just to kind of give you an idea in terms of the kid's size, athleticism, but the fact that this guy has got the size, got the length, he's got the strength, okay, and he is a terrific run stopper, powerful with his hands. I mean, when he extends his arms, he knocks back offensive linemen. A former wrestler, right? So that gives him the edge to gain leverage in the trenches. So that's why he doesn't have like the lightning quick first step or the speed to blaze off off of a lineman or anything like that. What he does is he's got the strength, he's got the length, and also he knows how to use his hands to leverage and get past the offensive lineman. This kid, I think, is going to be God willing, he's healthy, a 10, 15-year pro. That's how good this kid is. Just solid player. So
and he can play that edge position on the defensive line and also spell Eddie Goldman. That's what is intriguing about him.
Okay. Again, he's not going to run a great 40 time. He's not going to be Mr. Time out of the gym or anything like that. His numbers are not going to be great, but he's going to be a solid contributor. If you want to call it a better version of Mitch Unrein, who's a free agent as well. So that's a kid I really, really have grown to love over this process. And another kid that going back to NC State, B.J. Hill. I know his teammates, his defensive line mates get most of the pub, but this is another guy, good size, 6'4", 311 pounds, 3-year starter. Used to be a running back in high school. So he's athletic, big body, and he can dominate at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. Can generate a bull rush. Has trouble finishing, meaning there's times he's there for the sack and the quarterback gets away, or he can drop the running back, for a tackle for a loss in the backfield, and the guy will wiggle away. But plays with a high motor and will chase runners down both in the backfield and downfield. So that's another kid that really got me, that caught my eye at the combine.
Former teammate of Mitch Trubisky, right? Hill is. No. This guy is from NC State.
Oh,
my bad. Okay.
Yeah. The guy that really kind of disappointed me though in this group is Tim Settle from Virginia Tech. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this kid, and how he's he's a dominant run stopper, has the ability to penetrate, get upfield real quick, but he just looked bad and unathletic. And I don't know if he was nervous or he hadn't prepared for it or whatnot, but showed marginal balance and no lateral agility really that well. That doesn't look coordinated. So I was real disappointed in him. So his tape doesn't match his workout. He has some pretty decent tape out there. But just one kid that like, there's always debates about, him being in the next tier of defensive tackles or defensive linemen. Like right now, I have BJ Hill with a higher grade than him. And, Hill came in with, not as much pub or notoriety as Settle did. So that's the one kid that's disappointed me in terms of the defensive line position.
All right. And Phil, Danny, you started the segment talking about that the Bears' biggest need in the draft is going to be this edge rusher position. So tell us what you saw at the Combine. Do you have somebody the Bears should target? And if you've got a player or two that the Bears should stay away from, please let us know.
This is, like you said, I mentioned, I think this is the Bears' biggest need right now, is outside pass rusher, outside linebacker. Assuming they're not going to get anybody in free agency or they're not going to trade for somebody, I think that they're the guy opposite of Leonard Floyd will be coming from the draft. Maybe that first-round pick, who knows? But not necessarily. I didn't necessarily pick guys that I would say would go number 8 overall, but guys maybe they can get in the second, third round. One guy that I could see them going for in the first round, maybe if they trade down, is Marcus Davenport from UT San Antonio. Again, although you were there with me on the first day of the practice at the Senior Bowl, this kid looked good, looked powerful at the point of attack in one-on-one drills, and then had a little bit of a lull there in the middle of the week there. Got thrown around a couple times by your boy, Kappa. But then he picked it up. He picked it up in the last practice of the week, and then in the game he had a
huge
good impact in the game. Yeah. So what impressed me about this kid is he's raw. He doesn't have a game plan out there in terms of pass rushing, and obviously he comes from a lower tier of competition. So when guys like this come out, what you want to see on tape, you want to see them pop. You want to see them stick out on tape, and he does. So he dominates offensive line. And I mean, he literally was controlling the line of scrimmage in this game that I was watching versus Texas State. I mean, the quarterback had no time because all he was doing was simply bull rushing the offensive lineman right back into the quarterback. So he's got the length, he's got the size, he's got the speed. We'll need some time to develop. I'm not saying he's going to be a day one starter, but I think this is a guy potentially who's got, the ability to develop into, a top tier pass rusher. In terms of some of the lesser known guys, Marquise Haynes from Ole Miss caught my eye as well. A little bit on the shorter side, 6'3", and light, 235. But he's a very productive player at Ole Miss. I mean, SEC conference. He finished his career with 47.5 tackles for loss, 32 sacks, 12 forced fumbles. So, he's lean, like I said, but he's quick off the ball, possesses the natural ability to bend the corner and, as a pass rusher, displayed quick feet and the ability to open his hips and drop in linebacker drills, which is, you're going to be playing outside linebacker, be playing in space a lot of times. So he looked comfortable dropping back. Athletically looked comfortable. But he will need to bulk up, and obviously he'll need to be, coached up. But this guy could come in as probably like a pass rush specialist, initially, and then develop as the time goes on. So, but again, this is not a guy I'm looking at in the first, second round. This is a guy like, day 3, late day 2, early day 3, something like that, Another kid that caught my eye as well, this kid had a great 2016, and he surprised everybody by going back for his senior year, and it might have cost him a lot of money. And I'm talking about Harold Landry from Boston College. He had, in 2016, he had 16.5 sacks, 22 tackles for loss. Everyone thought he was coming out last year, and he decided to go back. Okay, he went back and ended up only playing 9 games due to an ankle injury. So in Boston College, they lined him up as a hand-in-the-ground defensive end, which obviously he's not going to be in the NFL. He's only 6'3", 252 pounds. What he does is, obviously, he's a competitor. He plays hard every down, can bend the corner, aggressive pass rusher. He has got great change of direction ability. Ran the 3-cone drill, like you were talking about earlier, some of these drills we don't really pay attention to. The 3-cone drill I do pay attention to, and I'll tell you why, because it shows your ability to change directions real quick. And
for that position is specific, so it gives you a good idea.
Right. Anything below a 7-second time is great, and this guy ran a 6.88, which I think was the tops at the combine. So he just looked smooth, and he looked like he belonged in linebacker drills. Had no problems dropping back, no problems breaking in on the ball. I don't know if you guys saw those drills. A lot of those guys were dropping the ball when they're throwing it to him. This guy was catching them all. So, but like I said, he's a little bit undersized. I know the way Ryan Pace likes to draft. He likes to draft long, lean, athletic kids. So he doesn't fit their criteria per se in terms of the length and stuff like that. But in terms of production and a guy who has a motor that runs 100 miles an hour, Harold Landry is my guy. And in terms of, there's guys that caught my eye that I got to do some more digging on, watching some more tape. One of them is Dorrance Armstrong Jr. from Kansas.
Yeah, I like that guy too. Yeah,
another kid who was productive as a sophomore in 2016. 20 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. But then what happens? There was a change, defensive scheme change, and they had him playing a 5 technique. So they had him standing up and playing 2 gap, which is not his forte. He's more of an upfield, attack the quarterback kind of guy. So I think that's a guy, if you get him later, there's a chance to develop into a pass rusher. And a guy that just totally, blew me athletically wise, blew my mind athletically wise, was Josh Sweet from FSU. Yeah. Again, measurables in terms of length, in terms of size. He's got everything. He's got the long arms, big hands. Yep. Ran a 4.5 340. So I came back, did some research on him. Highly rated 5-star athlete coming out of high school, out of Virginia. A 3-year starter for the majority of his time in Florida State. First of all, when I put his tape on, he's slender, he's thin, right? So, and they had him playing with his hand in the ground, so he got blown off the ball a lot. So I think obviously it's going to be a position change for him. It's going to be, put out as outside linebacker, be allowed to play more in space and so on and so forth. So he's got very good straight line speed, can bend the corner. Doesn't play up to a 4.5 340, so that might have just been him training and getting ready to run a fast 40. So, but concern with him though, he had a knee injury in 2016. Yeah. And when I was watching some of his tape, it looked like at times he was kind of carrying that left leg of his. He had the brace on too. So, it's a year after his injury, so he's probably better now. 2 years off post surgery, so it might be getting him at a good time, to develop him. Again, a guy that I'm just going to think about, do some more research on, but maybe like in the back of my mind, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, if he's still available, a guy, you can grab him there and develop. So, and in terms of, do you want to stick to outside linebacker or do you want to go to inside linebacker?
Let's go inside.
All right. So, obviously, my guy at inside linebacker is Roquan Smith. Now, unfortunately, he pulled his hamstring, just ran 140. I think it was just a 4.5 140. I love everything about this kid. He's a day one starter inside linebacker next season for any team that drafts him, in my opinion. As a matter of fact, if it came down to the number 8th pick and both he and Tremaine Edmunds are on the board, I'm going with Roquan Smith over Edmunds. And I'll tell you why, because he's an instinctive player. He's a guy who knows how to maneuver around blocks, goes up and under, over blockers. He's got the feel for the position. He's a producer. Edmunds is a more talented, athletic kid, but I just don't see him as a middle linebacker, and I don't know where to put him in terms of position for him in a Bears scheme. Mm-hmm. So that's why I would go with Roquan Smith. That's my top inside linebacker. A couple of guys that caught my eye, and I'm sure this guy was the talk of the NFL Network coverage, but Leighton Vander Esch from Boise State. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'd heard the name before in a couple of games I watched, but I never thought of anything. So I put in his tape. I'm like, man, this guy can move.
Wow, yes.
Kid is 6'4", 256 pounds. Like I said, long arms. He did 20 reps on the bench, so he's got okay strength. But he almost broke the gym 40 inches. So in a 6.883 cone. So he's got that change of direction. So I put his tape in. And again, former basketball player, so he's a good athlete. Good instincts for the position, can quickly diagnose what is happening in front of him, can attack. He's got the lower body explosiveness that you like to see in a defensive player, especially one that might be playing out on the edge. Athletic middle linebacker, can flip his hips, cover tight ends down the seam. Solid instincts, can quickly locate the football. These are some of the notes I put down as I was watching some of his film. So he can navigate through traffic, float to the ball, does a good job of getting underneath the blockers' pads. So this is a guy that definitely caught my eye. The one thing I do have to kind of slow my roll here is is his play strength is an issue. All right, he needs more muscle. He
Right.
will get wiped out by offensive linemen. Can get attached to blockers, so he'll have to learn how to use his hands to either shed quickly or just avoid them altogether. And only had 1 year production. Came out after his junior season, so that's a small concern for me. So I wish he had gone back for his senior year, maybe get more tape on him, but he came out. So, but I mean, on tape and athletically, he looks good.
He does. This guy, he's worked his way into the first round for sure, and maybe a top 20 pick. Dare I say maybe even top 15 based on what he did at the combine, and the projection for him is that this guy could be. I think if it came down to choosing Marcus Davenport and this guy, who you did a much better job of pronouncing his name than I will ever, Leighton Vander Esch, I think it is. If it comes down to Davenport and Vander Esch, I would have difficulty choosing Davenport over this guy. I know that everyone is probably saying you're crazy, but there's something about this guy from a gut level that tells me this guy it could be a future star in this league.
But the only thing is, there are two different positions, right? So Davenport is a pass rusher. This guy's more of a middle linebacker.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's not going to be a pass rusher. And the other thing, fair or not fair to the kid, but whenever I think linebacker, Boise State, I have flashbacks to Shea McClellan. So I'm not saying he's one play Shea, but he's definitely impressive on tape. Let's just say that.
Man, I was on a high. Now it was like you knocked
Again,
my
I don't
buzz.
want to burst your bubble. I'm just saying
You
he's
burst
at
it.
1 year of production, right? So, and that was his junior year, and he came out. So,
All right. Let me ask both of you guys this question, and we got to wrap things up here. It's definitely last call. We've been taping for 2 hours now. If it came down to if the Chicago Bears had a position need at inside linebacker and at guard, and you could only choose between Quenton Nelson and Tremaine Edmunds, who would you choose? Let me begin with West Coast Phil.
I would take the defensive guy first.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
now let's go to Danny.
We're talking about the first pick, right? I mean, the first round, right?
Correct.
Eighth overall.
Absolutely correct.
I would take the defensive guy first.
All right.
throw in-
You said it. You don't need to say it again.
Can I throw in Roquan Smith as an option, or it's got to be between?
No, just
and-
between those two, because this is a debate that Shane Marsaw and I had just recently.
I would go with defensive linebacker first.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for being on the show, guys.
Well, I'm assuming you'd go with Nelson.
Well, only because because I love both of these players. I'd love to have them both, but only because I'm just really concerned about protection for Mitch Trubisky. So I know you should draft best player available, and there's every reason to believe that Edmunds is going to be a superstar in this league. But also, we know that Quenton Nelson could be a transformative type of offensive guard, like a Larry Allen, like a Hutchinson from Seattle. I mean, we wouldn't know who Shane Alexander is as a running back if it wasn't for that left guard who played for Seattle, right? So Quenton Nelson can be that transformative plug-and-play offensive guard. And it's just the need there oversees almost any player that might come up at that eighth position. And I hate to draft that high for an offensive guard. I know you can find some good ones later in the draft, but boy, oh boy, there's just something about Quenton Nelson and Mitch Trubisky that just makes sense for me.
But that wasn't the reason. That wasn't the reason why I made my decision.
Okay, tell me why.
I go with the fact that if you can stay in a game, so you got to have a defense, because defense wins championships. So that's why I picked the defensive player first, because you got to still be able to stay in the game. On the offensive side of the ball, you can still scheme to cover up weakness, but when you still need to be able to be in the game to even be able to do that. So that was my reasoning for picking the defensive guy.
Yeah, but you can scheme only to a degree when it comes down to the health of the quarterback. One of the things that we did on our last Bears 100 Proof show is that I played a soundbite from Mike Mayock, and he said that it is the number one thing that quarterbacks tell him the most is that what bothers them the most is pressure up the middle. And so now people are building offensive lines from the inside out, where when I was a kid, you built with the offensive tackles because of the Lawrence Taylors and so forth. Now, because of the Aaron Donalds and so forth, you've got to build from the inside out, and you're already scheming to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible. So you just have to have guards and centers that can protect that middle of the pocket so that the quarterback can take a step forward or two, get rid of the ball quickly. I just see that as such a huge need in today's NFL. And I know that what Tremaine Edmunds can become. He can become a Brian Urlacher with speed going to sideline. He can patrol inside the numbers to such a high degree that passing him up would be painful. But I got to protect my franchise quarterback.
But you protect them with the run pass option, which you guys are going to see a lot of this coming year. So that's why I said you can cover. Plus, you guys have a quarterback that can run the ball. So
run for his life.
You won't need to protect him right away because he's still young. He's still mobile. I mean, look at Russell Wilson. Their offensive line sucks too. But
that's a good point. That's a good point.
He's able to stay healthy because of his legs. And nowadays, if you have a quarterback that can run and throw the ball, you have some time to get the offensive lineman. You don't have time to build a great defense. So it goes back to being able to stay in the game too. So I would go with the defensive guy first.
All right, Danny.
Here's my reasoning, and we're talking about a top 10 pick, and there's certain things that I won't take in the top 10. Now, Quenton Nelson might be the best guard, might be a future Hall of Famer. My thing is, I don't value the position of guard as a top 10 pick. Guard or center or even running back, I don't value as a top 10 pick. I want, with a top 10 pick, I want impact players that can help me win this coming season. You know, you get a Quenton Nelson, he could be a future All-Pro, but he might not get your quarterback killed, but the offensive right tackle could get your quarterback killed. So just by getting Quenton Nelson, plug him into your offensive line doesn't mean it's going to protect Mitchell Trubisky. Now, the other thing is when you're picking offensive line versus a defender, like Phil said, defense will win championships. If you have a defensive unit right now that is top 10 last year and trending upwards, you add a talented young athlete like Tremaine Edmunds. You can continue adding talent, adding speed to the defensive unit. So that's another reason. The other thing is you mentioned two great guards, Larry Allen and Steve Hutchinson. I think Allen went in the third or fourth round, and Hutchinson was like in the 20s. So if you trade down and Quenton Nelson's available in the 21, 22 range, like the scenario you threw out earlier, but with Buffalo, sure, I don't mind taking him there, you know. But I don't use a top 10 pick on a guard. I need. Look what happened last time. The top 10 picks used on a guard. We had Jonathan Cooper. I believe he went 7th to Arizona or 6th to Arizona, and we had Chance Warmack go 8th or 9th to Tennessee, and both guys busted. Right. So that's the thing is when you put that question to me, I'm always going to go with a talented defender over a guard. Now, if you're talking about an all-pro offensive lineman or a top-rated offensive tackle, you got to go with tackle, right? Because I know traditionally now the offensive lines are being built more so stronger in the middle than they are from the outside, but the tackles still take on the other team's top pass rushers, whether it's on a right defensive end or a left defensive end. Tackles are still taking on top-tier pass rushers, okay?
All right,
those guys.
Let me challenge some of what you're saying. We're going to go a whole extra hour here. Who's the best pass rusher with the LA Rams?
Aaron Donald.
What position does he play?
They play him at outside defensive end.
Well, but he plays the majority of his plays in the middle, and I can go on and on. We are seeing some of the best, teams, their best pass rush is coming in the middle because defensive coordinators are adjusting. They're scheming now because the ball is coming out so quickly. So the pass rush has to come from the middle, and that's why the Bears can rely on two mediocre offensive tackles because we're seeing fewer and fewer pass pressure coming from the tackles because the ball is coming out in 2.9 seconds. That's and then one other thing, and I'll give you time to respond to that. But one other thing, because Shane used this argument too that you can find offensive guards in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Well, Larry Allen didn't start playing at a high level immediately. It took him a while. Shane brought up Brandon Brooks, the guard from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a Super Bowl caliber guard. He played Pro Bowl, but it wasn't until his 2nd or 3rd season where he was entrusted with playing at the starter position. And so my argument is that Quenton Nelson, you don't have to wait that season. With a Tremaine Edmunds, you might have to. A 19-year-old inside linebacker, it's going to take him a while to play at that high level that Quenton Nelson can give you immediately for a position of need in the changing world of NFL offenses. Now, please go ahead back and rebut anything I said.
So yeah, I agree with what you said wholeheartedly in terms of, the defensive coordinators are scheming now to bring pressure up the middle, get the pressure in the quarterback's face, get them uncomfortable, because the outside rush is coming on. Tackles are now being taught to get the defensive linemen use their momentum and get them upfield, allow the quarterback to step up in the pocket, find a receiver. So that's why they're bringing all the pressure up front. I agree with you there, but the only thing is, you're giving me Quenton Nelson and you're giving me it's true, Edmunds, it might not be we don't have a position for him yet. That's not who I would pick. And also, I want to be clear. I like Quenton Nelson. I'm not tearing him down as a player. He's a very good player. But I'm just saying, if I had to pick between those two, I'm picking a young defensive chess piece for Vic Fangio, a guy who's got speed, athleticism, length, and can possibly develop into an outside pass rusher, as opposed to a guy who's a guard who yet has a very important position. But Shane is right. You can find these guards in the 2nd and 3rd round. You can get Isaiah Wynn in the 2nd round. You can get some of the other guards that we were talking about earlier in the show in the 2nd and 3rd round. You can fill that position. It doesn't have to be Quenton Nelson. It doesn't have to be at number 8. Now again, you trade down. The scenario you played out with Buffalo sounds great to me. You go, you get 21 and 22 and some more draft capital. Let them come up, get their quarterback. You go down. He won't be there, but if Nelson is there, you jump on him then. You take him then because the value of the player at that point, at that pick, is higher than where it's at. Right now, Quenton Nelson, we all think he's a surefire can't miss, but they thought Jonathan Cooper was a surefire can't miss. They thought Chance Warmack was a surefire can't miss. So there is no surefire can't misses anymore in the NFL draft. Half the first round is going to be bust. That just average. That's how it works. Half the first round is going to be a bust. So
I can make that same argument for any player that you choose for that 8th position, whether it's the linebacker Smith, whether it's Edmunds, any player. I can make that same argument. But there is no denying that if you were going to make a big board and the category was players that are as close as you can possibly get to being can't miss, then Quenton Nelson has to be in that top 5 and maybe even top 3. Yes or no?
Why? Because he slams a couple of guys down on the ground?
Oh no! Because he's got technique. Because he can immediately help Jordan Howard keep that 5.0 rushing yard per average. Because he can immediately be a plug and play player. Because he can immediately provide more than adequate pass protection. That to me, this is the most ready guy in this draft, aside maybe from 2 or 3 other guys.
Right. I'm saying there's no guarantee he's going to come in and be an all-pro. No matter how good he looks on tape. So,
but the guarantee is even less for the guy you're going to choose in the 2nd round. Mathematically, the odds then go from 50% for a first rounder to 20% 20%, 30% of the second rounder. And we're not talking about Quenton Nelson. We're talking about Mitch Trubisky. We're talking about giving him all of the weapons he needs.
But in the second round, if I bust on my guard, it's a second round pick.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Pick.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in here for a second? Because I'm listening to what some of you guys are saying. I think the problem is people misinterpret the round you're picked in versus the value of the position. And I agree with you, Danny, in the aspect that you can still get guys of that caliber in the second and third rounds because it's not that particular player or how am I trying to say this? Your offensive lineman, it's going to take those guys time to develop. So you can get a decent guy in later rounds is what Danny's point is, and I'm hoping I'm right. Whereas on the defensive side, you can get a guy that can make an immediate impact right away in the first round or whatever round. And the reason why is because on the defensive side of the ball, players can play more with instinct right away because you don't have to think as much on defense as you do on offense, and especially on the line. Those guys have to learn blocking schemes and things of that nature, whereas on the defensive side of the ball, all you got to do is just tell the guy, go after the quarterback. He doesn't have to know scheme-wise. He doesn't have to know as much as a lineman does. So that's, again, goes back to my point of why I would take a defensive guy over an offensive guy first, because he can develop into the type of player you need him to be much quicker than an offensive lineman will.
Danny,
does that make sense?
I totally get your argument about value drafting. I totally get it, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think that what you just said is undervaluing the need of protecting quarterbacks in the inside of the pocket. This is the new NFL.
No, that's not what I'm saying, because you still have a need to protect the quarterback, but there's ways you can protect the quarterback, especially if you have a defense that is, prime example, the Baltimore Ravens, 2000 Ravens, even you guys should know the Chicago Bears won their 85 championship on defense. Their offense wasn't a juggernaut. And they didn't have a lot of Pro Bowl guys on the line. They did adequate jobs. You can get away with an adequate job, getting away with players that are average to, above average on the offensive line compared to not having a guy on the defense that will make an impact right away.
It's the value of the pick for the value of the position. So with the two players we're comparing here, Edmunds to Nelson, the ceiling for Edmunds is much higher than what it is for Nelson. Nelson, he can be a great guard, but if Edmunds is a great defender, okay, he's an impact defender
right away.
That is even if it takes a year or two, right? Just say because he's 19 years old, that is a much greater value for that 8th pick. If we're talking about 20s and 30s and all that stuff. Okay, I can see your argument, but for you to get a possible instant impact defender as opposed to a all-pro guard, I value the position of guard. Again, I'm not knocking the player. I'm just saying the ceiling, I'm going for the high ceiling right there with a kid like Edmunds.
The guard you're talking about is a unicorn in the NFL. He is. The history's proven it. Guys, like Danny said, guys that got picked that high, they were all busts.
I'm sorry.
I think the last high pick on a guard was 12th, and that was Zach Martin from Notre Dame.
Yeah,
I believe. I'm not 100% on that, but
you know why? Because NFL draft personnel people and general managers are as slow to adapt as the two of you guys are. You've got to protect your quarterback. You've got to. So this is what is the most important thing to do for the Chicago Bears in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. It's protecting Mitch Trubisky. Is making sure that he plays all 16 games. So an investment in the middle of the line to a guy who is as close as possible to a sure thing that we're going to see out of a guard coming into out of college into the NFL. That to me is a virtual no-brainer. Now,
I think what most teams do to protect their quarterbacks, though, like you're talking about, is they usually will get that guy in free agency, a veteran player who's been around for a while, because he's seasoned. He has the ability to learn a new scheme and be able to protect the quarterback as opposed to throwing a guy in there that's a rookie straight off the street.
I agree with that, but the problem is that Andrew Norwell is the only high quality guard, and then there's a huge drop off after that, and then secondly, what makes Nelson much more intriguing for the Bears is the fact that his college coach for the last 4 years is now the offensive line coach for the Chicago Bears, and that allows him to continue his rapid development and makes him, again, just is another piece of evidence of why this guy is a can't-miss player.
Yeah, but now he's still a college kid coming off of playing college kids, jumping into playing, veterans. That's where I see the difference. And I don't see him being able to step in right away and be the type of player that you're looking at, that you're envisioning. Will he get there? Yes, because he is a little more advanced than a lot of guys, and a lot of it probably has to do with who his coach was. But history tells me that he's not going to be that player for 2 to 3 years.
Okay. And
if you're talking about protecting the quarterback right away, then there's other ways to protect the quarterback than the offensive lineman, and that's what the Bears are going to be doing. And the only other way I see to do it right away is to get the guy in free agent.
And one of the ways that you talked about it earlier, Phil, is the RPO. Well, with the RPO, the most important blockers in the RPO are the guards. You can't run an RPO if you don't have good blocking guards. It's just not going to happen because the play takes a while to develop.
RPO, all you're doing is down blocking. That's not that hard. You're down blocking to one side and you're letting one guy on the edge come unblocked. And the quarterback is either going to give the ball to the running back or he's going to keep it himself. So having the one guy that's the most big threat to your quarterback, you're putting him in the position to make a decision as opposed to straight regular man-on-man blocking. That's how you protect the quarterback.
All right. On this topic, Danny Shimon will get the last word.
Again, I don't want to knock the player or the position. I'm just thinking that I'm going with the higher ceiling. If I get myself a defensive cornerstone, again, no sure thing. We know that, but neither is Nelson, in my opinion. He's no sure thing. If you get a defensive cornerstone that young with the ability to be a difference maker on defense immediately, I go with the defensive cornerstone.
Lawrence Taylor.
I wish there was a Lawrence Taylor in this draft.
No, but I'm making your point, Danny.
Right.
That's Lawrence 40 years ago.
Okay, but still, on the defensive side, you can find a guy that can make an immediate impact much quicker.
I'm not saying obviously this guy's going to be. But what if Edmunds turns into Urlacher? What if that happens? I'm not saying he is going to be that, but I'm saying what if you get a kid that is the next Brian Urlacher? You have a future Hall of Famer on your. And you chose a guard over him. Even if Nelson goes on to be a Pro Bowl guard, if you get a Brian Urlacher potentially on your defense, you go with that 99.9%.
I think that when you look at all the factors, I'm sorry, I said I was going to give you the last word, but I have to add this. I think that when you look at all of the factors and the fact that the Chicago Bears defense, without a Brian Urlacher, played top 10 in the NFL, and the offensive line now without Josh Sitton has such a huge hole to protect your quarterback and to maintain that 5-point rushing per average, yard per carry average for Jordan Howard. You need to to have a player like a Quenton Nelson. Now, hopefully this issue will be addressed in free agency, that we'll get a quality offensive guard like Andrew Norwell. But if not, then I am scared that we're going to get down to the second round and Quenton Nelson will be gone, Isaiah Wynn will be gone, Will Hernandez will be gone, and that we're going to be left with guys who are going to need a year or two to develop, and Mitchell Trubisky is going to be lying on his back because we did not draft Quenton Nelson in the first round. Gentlemen, this has been a blast. My recorder says we've been talking for over 2 hours. You guys are the best. This is like we were really at a bar drinking drinks. And boy, I wish we were.
I had a virtual cocktail.
Oh.
I had a real cocktail.
Oh, look at you. I had water, so that's typically not me, which is
always the party pooper.
Guys, let our audience know where they can find you on Twitter.
I'm Danny Shimon. DShimon56 is my Twitter handle, and look for mine and West Coast Phil's scouting reports to be coming out soon on the website. On
bearsbarroom.com. And Phil, where can people find you on Twitter?
They can find me at Rainey_Phil.
And that's RAINE
NEY.
Right. _ Phil PHIL, and we call him affectionately West Coast Phil. We're gonna have a show with you and East Coast Phil on, and you've promised us no singing and dancing, and for that we're eternally grateful. Guys, it's fun. I'm looking forward to seeing your scouting reports coming down the line very quickly here. We're going to get through free agency frenzy first and focus on that for the next 2 weeks. And then after that, these draft scouting reports will be up on bearsbarroom.com. You will find them on the front page. It's Danny Shimon. It's Phil Rainey with top-notch scouting analysis. We're very, very lucky to have him at the bar room. Thanks, very guys, for listening and for being a part of the show. And for all of our listeners, remember, if you drink, please do not drive, and always bear down.